Driving that culture. 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 Driving that culture.
I'm Billy. And welcome to another edition of Dropping That Culture with JD and AJ. I'm JD.
I think this is where I'm supposed to say I'm AJ.
Yeah, you.
Obviously, this is going to be a very special episode as we're going to be looking into Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo. And I'm going to be doing this ridiculous impression throughout the entire show. But first off, thank you again for another wonderful listen here, another little wonderful podcast we got here in the 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's been another great week. Another good, actually, it's been a great couple weeks of bookings. I'm very proud and very happy of that. And also, found out a nice little piece of news. Now, the show that I've been mentioning that I'm in, 100 Humans on Netflix, it premieres on the 13th of March coming up here. And also, the music video that I'm in for our artist Boz Lowe drops on March 13th. So I'll be dropping both of those on the Belsiverse pages on Facebook and Instagram, and also going to be dropping it on the Dropping That Culture page.
As one should.
Exactly. And I'm see if I can. I'm pretty sure I'm going to add it to the. If we can, add it to the YouTube page too. If we can.
I'm going to put it everywhere.
Yeah, right. All right. So, like I said, it's been a nice couple weeks, and actually, right before we started this podcast tonight, just got another gig. So this is going to be really nice. I can't really say for who yet, but I'll let you guys know once I can clear all that. But it's been a nice couple weeks.
You can't say what it's for, though, even if you can't say who, right?
I can say what it's for. It's a music video, but I can't say for who.
Well, he's on a streak right now.
Exactly. So doing my thing, people doing my thing. So
see, that's what happens when you spend a good chunk of your childhood learning how to do Thriller.
Mm-hmm.
It translates into the rest of your life. When you finally make the jump to go acting, you book all the music videos.
See, you're joking. But also, no, you're joking. But like that's all I'm about to say is absolutely true.
Yeah,
that the weirdest skills that you acquired as a kid and that you cultivated as an adult will help you in the acting game because they will always ask you to do some weirdo shit. Hence, like dancing in a music video or a Scooby-Doo impression. Shit like that, you know what I'm saying? So it helps a lot.
It's gonna be one of them episodes, folks.
Yeah. But let's go ahead and drop into our favorite segments here. Now, one of my personal favorite, 7 Degrees of Eddie Murphy, where I can connect any American film star to the great Eddie Murphy within 7 films. Again, it's a variation of 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, but I like this one better. So give me a couple names, AJ.
Mark Harmon.
Ooh, good choice.
Thank you.
Actually, yeah, I got it already. Mark Harmon was in Summer School with Kirstie Alley. Kirstie Alley was in. Let's go to the Kirstie Alley catalog here. Got it. Kirstie Alley was in Look Who's Talking 2 with Damon Wayans. Damon Wayans was in Beverly Hills Cop with Eddie Murphy.
Once you get to Damon, it's pretty much all done.
Yeah, as soon as I was like, yeah, Kirstie. Plus, I've always had a thing for Kirstie Alley, to be honest with you.
Still do.
I still do, yeah. She like black dudes, man. So go ahead. Hey, Kirstie, hit me up. Give me another one.
I don't believe it. Have we ever done Drew Barrymore?
No, we have not.
Let's do Drew Barrymore.
Okay. Not that I recall. Okay, Drew Barrymore was in. Oh, okay. I'll go this route. All right, Drew Barrymore was in Scream with Neve Campbell. Neve Campbell was in Scream 2 with Jada Pinkett. Jada Pinkett was in The Nutty Professor with Eddie Murphy.
Helen Hunt.
Wow, that's a deep cut.
Yeah.
How many Helen Hunt movies are there? No.
She had a moment.
No. I think I got you though. Helen Hunt. Got it. Here we go. Helen Hunt was in What Women Want with Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson was in The Expendables 3 with Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes was in Dolomite Is My Name with Eddie Murphy.
All right. See, you could have gone old school with that one.
How from?
You know the direction I was going to go?
What?
Tom Hanks.
Oh yeah.
Castaway, you do Tom Hanks, Dan Aykroyd.
She was his wife in fucking Castaway. That's right.
Because you get to Dan Aykroyd through Dragnet.
That's right. Yeah, you could have went that route, but yeah, this is the more direct one I can think of anyway. But yeah, that's cool. So
I'm used to going deep cuts. When you start doing all this modern stuff and then up back at Dolomite, it's still good.
Yeah.
But it throws me off a little because I'm used to going deep cuts.
Yeah. All right, you know what? Let's do one more and try to do the deepest cut you can think of. This will be the last one for this one.
Did we ever? No, I already did that one.
Mm-hmm. Come on, D. Think deep, man.
I always come prepared with 3, but now you're throwing me off with
this
fourth.
This is airtime, man. Come on, I'm gonna do that to you, bro. I really
You are gonna do that to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what? It's not a deep cut, but this would be kind of an interesting one because there's not a hell of a lot of overlap.
I'm listening.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Okay, got it.
Stay away from Growing Pains.
No, I don't know. I never do TV shows. I never do TV. It's always movies. Okay. Shit, right here. All right, so Leonardo DiCaprio was in The Departed with Anthony Anderson. Anthony Anderson was in Life with Eddie Murphy.
Shit, that's right. He's got that little.
That's right.
He's got that
that's
small
right. He's
part.
the cop. He's one of the cops in The Departed. That's right.
Shit.
Oh man, that was fun.
I would have stumped you if it had been like 15 years ago.
Yeah, but now.
Now it's just the problem.
Actually, with the movie The Departed, I could have got him through Nicholson, Alec Baldwin, all of them.
That's what I'm saying. Departed, unfortunately, was such a nexus. I mean, it was a great film, but it becomes such a nexus for talent that it hooks them up to everything. Because prior to that, like you'd have been scrolling for a minute, I think, to get there.
True. All right.
You probably still could, but
yeah. All right, so that was dropping that. That was 7 Degrees Eddie Murphy. But now let's go to another favorite segment.
We need to come up with some musical kind of intro, outro, a stinger for that.
I'm down for that. There you go.
Okay.
Huh?
From now on, what is the intro, outro for 7 Degrees of Eddie Murphy?
Let's record that shit.
Dude, that's going to be my ringtone for you.
I know it was surprising if you do that.
I'm dead serious.
I know you are.
And if I'm ever in a position where anyone from Eddie Murphy's organization might call me, that will then become the ringtone for them.
Fuck yeah. Oh, it'd be great.
Too good.
All right, so let's go ahead and knock it to our next segment. WWBS. What would Busey say? Let's do a little rant with the great Gary Busey. Now, what is Gary going to be ranting about this week, AJ?
Well, as a wink and a nod to our Scooby-Doo that we're going for, which we'll get into this in a little bit, because it's never been completely confirmed, I would be very interested in finding out Gary Busey's thoughts about marijuana.
Okay.
Some of the kids call it pot.
Oh, here we go. Marijuana. My friend, I loves me some marijuana. I love all the different types and different orientations of marijuana. The one that really got me hooked on the drug itself is what we call Master Yoda. I really dug that one. It really expanded my mind, even more so than normal. Which is crazy. I mean, I was looking into the secrets of the universe whenever I use marijuana, man. Oh my God, I love marijuana. I mean, I think it makes the world go round. Now, people in the government are trying to shut down marijuana. Not so much shut it down, but they're kind of trying to control it. They're trying to control it. I really don't appreciate that. Marijuana is made from the earth. Marijuana is meant here for all of us. We're all meant here to sit here and enjoy marijuana. Now, if I want to have some marijuana and then go out and have me some fucking Funyuns, that is my right as an American. I think that's all our rights, okay? I love me some marijuana. In fact, I love to go get some marijuana and watch my old movies and just kind of say to myself, damn, who's that handsome bastard? Ooh. You know, if I was a chick and 20 years younger, yeah, I fuck him hard. It'd be great. Tiger blood.
I mean, it's nice to see that he's got a positive outlook on it. He seems slightly less passionate than most of the cities that we've visited.
Yeah, but Gary likes pot.
Apparently.
It shows.
I'm waiting to see what happens if we ever get to psychedelics.
We'll get there eventually.
I'm almost certain, though, at this point, I would be surprised if Gary's done any psychedelics post-accident. I think he's just naturally, Joe Rogan always talks about DMT. I think he's just naturally producing DMT. at an extraordinary rate because he's on another planet.
Is it THC or DMT?
Well, DMT is the one that, like, supposedly, I guess your brain naturally produces as well, but it's a psychedelic.
Oh, okay,
THC,
okay.
or it's psychoactive, I think is what they say.
Okay.
And then THC is the psychoactive substance that's in marijuana.
Okay, cool. All right, so
if I remember it correct, I'm not a biologist.
Neither am I. So, but let's go ahead and go into dropping that news.
Dropping that news.
All right, so it's actually another one of those damn quiet weeks in Hollywood. A couple things I did actually look up. Number one is they're trying to produce yet another new Star Trek show.
Yes, they are.
And they're actually doing it with the cast of the Enterprise again. So they bring back the Enterprise, but with a new crew. And actually, it would be the crew right before James Kirk.
Well, yeah, and if I understood it correctly, it's kind of got... Seems like it's kind of got a wink and a nod, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but with Captain Pike,
yes,
it's a wink and a nod back to the J.J. Abrams universe.
It's a wink and a nod to the original interpretation of the show, because the original pilot of Star Trek, Christopher Pike, was the pilot. Well, he was the captain.
Okay.
Yeah. So
because I still get a little bit confused because I'm solid new gen on. Mm-hmm. But it was so hard, especially when I was coming up, to get the old ones that I can get lost pretty easy. That's why I'm asking.
The original pilot of Star Trek, Christopher Pike, was the captain. He had a number one played by Majel Barrett, who would go on to become the voice of the computer in all the different interpretations of Star Trek, and also would become to play. She's Lwaxana Troi.
Okay.
Yeah, she was the first number one, and then also it had Spock. The original Leonard Nimoy as Spock was on the original pilot. He's really the only character from the original pilot to carry over to the original series. But they did a thing on Star Trek Discovery within the last year or two where it had Christopher Pike's crew come and helping the crew of that ship, the Discovery.
Okay.
And their guest spot became so popular. And it was really, really good that now they're going to be spinning them off into their own show. And actually, the dude that plays Christopher Pike, Anson Mount, he's been around. He's another one of those actors been around for a minute. The first thing I knew him on was the ill-fated Inhumans thing that Marvel did. He played the leader, Black Bolt. He was decent in that, but he was really, really good as Christopher Pike, and I'm looking forward to this one. Like I said, and then actually number one was played by Rebecca Romijn. Yeah, and they had another actor whose name escapes me, but he played Spock, and he was actually kind of a sort of a story arc for Star Trek Discovery because the black captain of the show and Spock are like adopted brother and sister.
Okay.
So basically, it's going to be those main three: Pike, number one, and Spock. They're going to be the main people of this new Star Trek. They haven't decided on a name yet, but like I said, if they go forward with it, I'm with it because, like I said, I really like that interpretation.
I've always enjoyed Star Trek. I'm when it comes down to it, if you get far enough out in front of it, when it comes to sci-fi, huge sci-fi fan.
Me too.
So. You know, like I said, we've had this conversation 100 times. I grew up on Next Gen. That was the one thing I could count on being on my TV. And then later on, once it went to syndication, Deep Space Nine, I never really got down with Voyager as much. Yeah. I mean, I watched a little bit here and there, but anything that goes back to that, the original interpretation. Because when it comes to Star Trek, for me, if I'm going to go with the original, it's always Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
And it was more movies for me than it was the show. But I'm open to it. I think it's going to be good, and especially with what you can do now for special effects.
Oh yeah, it's going to be
a new level.
Star Trek Discovery is really great, and it's supposed to be the crew before the crew of what I'm saying, the people before Kirk and all this shit. But yeah, so it's
if I remember, wasn't that one a little bit of a darker interpretation of the universe, right? Or no, Enterprise. That was the one, right?
Enterprise was the one that was darker. It was supposed to be the very first crew of the very first Starship Enterprise. But yeah, this, like I said, still it's gonna be dope. Yeah. It's gonna be Star Trek.
100%.
Yeah. Now, since I briefly mentioned the MCU with Inhumans, there's gonna be apparently there's another rumor going around. It pertains to the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show that I've been mentioning a lot on this show. There's a storyline that I'm really excited that they might be doing. I've actually written a screenplay about this particular storyline, and I'm happy that I'm kind of sad, and my version probably won't get out there, but I'm happy they're going this route. So
it might get out there. It might just take a decade or something.
It might, yeah. But
they reboot shit like crazy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but yeah, there is a great storyline that came out in the 2000s called Truth, Red, White, and Black. And it's basically what they mixed was the Tuskegee experiments that really happened to black soldiers and the black people in the South, the syphilis trials or whatever, and mixing that with the super soldier serum. Now, it goes into the whole storyline with Captain America, gets taken out and he's disappeared for whatever. And the government is so desperate to recreate the super soldier serum that they decide to volunteer on black soldiers. Most of them die, but only one survives, Isaiah Bradley. Now, from what I'm hearing, they're going to be incorporating that storyline into the Falcon and Winter Soldier. Nice. And if they go that route, again, like I said, the other storyline I was talking about where America's not ready for a black Captain America, what if there already was one, but nobody knew about it? And I'm thinking they might retcon it so that he's a relative of Sam Wilson.
Okay.
That would be the natural way to go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, okay. So that's why he's so connected to Captain America and that kind of shit. So, but yeah, if they do go that route, if they show a flashback of that shit, oh my God.
Yeah.
Dude, because it was a really good, it was controversial at the time, but very controversial storyline. But it needs controversy. So certain shows work well with controversy, and especially this kind of storyline where it deals with race relations. I think of the Marvel Disney Plus shows so far, the one I'm very much most excited about is Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Well, and I mean, I gotta say, the one thing that, whether it's MCU or even the stuff they're trying desperately to get going over with DC, you've got to have something to help differentiate it better, because there's a glut of comic book superhero stuff right now, and there's just so much content. There's more content available now than ever before, and
before.
And so I mean, whether you're talking about kids that actually have time, talking about people who work jobs and everything else, there's fewer and fewer hours in the day, and more content. So you got to have something to grab their attention, and so. This is the better thing about this. I mean, you can pull the controversy card if you want.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's, from a lot of what we've seen from comic book stuff, it's far more original.
Yeah.
There's a more original take to this, something that's fresher and newer with this storyline. So I really hope they do it. It could be kick-ass.
And also, since we're talking about originality and the stuff now, I know you've heard about the possible reboot of Little Shop of Horrors, the musical. Yeah. But one piece of news that broke this past week was they're talking to Chris Evans about playing a part in that particular reboot. And my thinking is, given his penchant for comedy and shit like that, I think he's going to be the dentist.
Yeah.
The Steve Martin, Orange Scrivelli, DDS. I
think I still have it somewhere. I had this killer printout
of the maniacal
looking from inside the mouth out. I had this giant print that I got from this.
With Steve Martin, he has the drill and shit.
I shouldn't say where I got it, but
but Steve Martin
with the drill coming in,
yeah. So
all right, cool.
So I would be cool with that. Chris Evans as the maniacal abusive dentist.
I'm on board with that.
So am I. Yeah. And last little bit of news. This is more for you wrestling fans out there like myself. They just announced the latest inductees into the 2020 WWE Hall of Fame, and it will be Nikki and Brie Bella, the Bella Twins. Now, for most of this generation who don't know who the Bella Twins are, just go on fucking E. Go on the E channel. Fucking they're everywhere. They got 2 shows on there already. Total Divas for the WWE and Total Bellas. And they become, from social media superstars as a result of this show. Freaking more people know who the Bella Twins are than most of the fucking roster on the WWE right now.
Yeah.
And even people that don't know about wrestling, they know who the Bella Twins are.
They've definitely had a crossover more mainstream. Which, I mean, it's hard. I always hate saying shit like that because wrestling isn't really anything but mainstream at this point. I mean, it's not the 60s or 70s anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas, because, I mean, you followed historically, it was much more a Southern thing, right? So it was a little more regional. Yeah. Then you have, Andy Kaufman, that whole thing, and then it blew up 80s and 90s when we were coming up. Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely been more mainstream, but definitely at this point, they have the mass appeal, probably.
The thing with the Bella Twins, and a lot of people are going to be controversial about this because, in fact, they don't really consider them superstars because they were they had a thing called the WWE Diva Search where they pretty much just got a bunch of models and athletes and ex-cheerleaders and shit and say, hey, you want to be on wrestling? Yeah, cool. So that's pretty much how they got discovered. But to both of their credit, they actually discovered how to become really good pro wrestlers, both of them, Brie and Nikki. And I think the better of the two in terms of overall wrestling would be Nikki. She's the one with actually like, and then for longest time I couldn't tell them apart. And then Nikki's the one that got breast implants. It's like, oh, that's Nikki. So, but yeah, she. You're
like a slightly creepier version of Steve Carell in The Office, marking the girl with the marker on the arm so you can tell them apart.
Exactly. But yeah, like I said, they actually both became great wrestlers. Both were champions during the time in the WWE. At one point, Nikki Bella was engaged to John Cena. That broke apart. She's now actually engaged to be married to one of the dancers on Dancing with the Stars, which she did, Nikki Bella. And Brie Bella also is on social media. She has her own channel, basically because of the fact she has a child with another WWE superstar, Daniel Bryan, and their journey was one of the highlights of the whole Total Divas run on E, and there's a big ratings boost for them. So I'm gonna say very happy for Brie and Nikki. That, like I said, their crossover success is very few.
It's undeniable.
Very few wrestlers have ever reached this. Very few wrestlers have reached this level of popularity.
Honestly, the only other ones you can really put that are in their category, you probably got to give it to Hulk Hogan.
Yeah,
because he had the same thing with reality show. Prior to that, you could make some kind of an argument maybe for Andre the Giant. And look, it's not to take anything away from John Cena, because John Cena's definitely had some crossover stuff and doing good. And then, of course, we'd be totally remiss if we didn't mention the most successful.
The Rock,
Yeah, Dwayne Johnson, the most successful in the history.
Oh, yeah, and Dave Batista.
Batista's doing good.
He's doing great, yeah.
He's not quite Dwayne status yet,
but he's on his way. He's in some good shit, though.
And he's a killer actor.
Yeah,
fucking love him. Like, I knew nothing about Guardians of the Galaxy. We've had this conversation 100 times before.
No, nobody did.
Well, what I'm saying, because I just didn't know comics.
Right.
He fucking makes it for me in that.
Yeah.
He is killer in that role. He's hilarious.
His deadpan crazy. Yeah. So
he's great.
And then of course he was in the Blade Runner sequel, and he's in like Hotel Artemis with Jodie Foster, and he's in Spectre.
Yeah,
he's James Bond movie.
He's probably, just for any of our Filipino fans out there, he's probably the top Filipino actor in the world right now.
Yes, he is.
I mean, the dude is just killing it.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize, Dave Bautista is Filipino, but he is the top Filipino actor in the world right now.
Well, it's because, he's
so huge.
Normally you think like Filipino guys, people usually end up going to Manny Pacquiao, right?
Yeah, smaller guy.
The lightweight guy, but I mean, that dude,
that's a big ass Filipino.
He will lay you out.
Yes, he will. But so congratulations to the Bella twins, and that's basically all I got for dropping that news.
I ain't got nothing to add.
I got
dropping that news.
All right, now let's go into the meat and potatoes of this particular podcast. Like I said, this subject matter is gotta get our notes ready. But this subject has actually been one that I've really been wanting to do a deep dive in ever since we started this podcast. This is one of the first ideas I have for us to do a deep dive on. And like I said,
there's a lot to dive into.
Yeah, and it's actually one of the greatest cartoon characters of all time, Scooby-Dooby Doo. I'm so happy to start doing this, man.
Where are you?
Where are you, asshole? Now we're gonna go ahead and first.
Hey, you started out doing impressions.
The impression, yeah.
All I'm doing is quoting the song.
Well, let's go ahead and start out with the creation and concept of Scooby-Doo. Now, initially, in 1968, there were some parent groups, particularly one called Action for Children's Television, that began protesting companies like Hanna-Barbera, who at the time they felt were making cartoons with excessive violence for Saturday mornings, like cartoons like Johnny Quest, Space Ghost, the Herculoids, Birdman, and all this shit. Now, looking back on it, like, really? Like, but this is a generational thing. Like, that's excessive to y'all?
Well, I mean, but it's like anything else. Like, you watch like a rated R, well, what would now be rated R as a film from the 60s, I mean, hell, even something like Birdcage, or go a little bit later and you go to something like, actually, Deliverance is still terrifying.
Yes,
but most of the films that you watch from back then that had this kind of aura around them of being too violent or too scary or too this, and you watch it now, as desensitized and as insane as everything is now for us in 2020, you're going to be like,
this ain't shit.
Really? People had a problem with that?
Exactly.
All right.
But yeah, because of that particular parent group, they canceled most of those shows within I think a lot of them came in around like late 60s, like 67 to 68. Around 69, all of them were canceled.
Yeah.
And as a result, Hanna-Barbera felt the initiative to start producing programs again that were safe for kids.
Look, she's running a business. You got to make money.
Yeah. Now, Fred Silverman, which is a name that's going to be coming up a lot in this particular conversation, was an executive at CBS Television for daytime programming. And he was looking for a show to revitalize the Saturday morning lineup. Now, the first show he picked, and that has actually become very influential on Scooby-Doo, was the Archie show, based on the comic book Archie. You know, Jughead and Betty and Veronica and shit. So yeah, they had a cartoon and everything, and they were basically like in a band, and they would have like teenage adventures and shit. And one thing they would do on the show is they would have like musical numbers, and one particular song actually became it basically became number one on the Billboard charts. Sugar Sugar. Yeah. Sugar, sugar, dun 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 dun. Ah, honey, honey, dun 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 dun.
Wait, you do one more bar, we're gonna earn money.
Oh yeah, that's true. But that song, people have heard that song, you know, especially of our generation. They've heard it in a million different things. But yeah, that's where it came from, the Archie show, and it was a very popular show of its time. So, building upon that success, Fred Silverman decided, you know, he's going to contact Hanna-Barbera, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, about creating a show about a teenage rock band. But this time, the teens will actually be solving mysteries between gigs. Now, what he wanted to do is basically he envisioned a cross between the Archie show, and there was some serials back in the day called I Love a Mystery, where basically they would, you know, go out and solve mysteries and shit like that. And basically that was the initial genesis of the show. Now, while developing the show, the initial name of it was House of Mystery. Now, Joseph Barbera developed and sold most of the shows for Hanna-Barbera while Hanna himself produced them. So basically, he passed the task of doing like the write-up of the show, basically creating stories of the show, to two other writers, Joe Ruby and Ken Spears.
Yep.
Now, Ruby and Spears would eventually go on to have their own animation studio in the late 70s, early 80s. A lot of cartoons came out of that, like Thundarr the Barbarian. I think they're the ones that did the Smurfs. Ruby Spears.
Really?
I believe so.
No, because they might have worked with them on it, but if I remember right, the Smurfs came out of, it was a Norwegian country. Was it Sweden?
Yeah, but the actual cartoon itself.
You mean the American?
Yeah. La 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 la
Okay.
la la la. That bullshit.
All right.
You know the fucked up part about it is I was not. I can't. I'm sorry. I don't like the Smurfs.
I wasn't a big fan either, to be honest.
I like the Snorks.
Snorks was awesome.
Yeah, hey, come on, it's the Snorks. They would.
Smurfs were getting a little bit too. A little bit too weird for me.
They were too happy and too. Plus, you couldn't
It seemed
tell.
like everybody was on something.
Plus, aside from the three of them, you couldn't tell them apart.
Yeah, I mean,
It's Smurfette. What is it? Smurfette.
it just seemed like they were
Papa's-
making it easier for them to draw.
Smurfette, Papa Smurf, and Brainy Smurf. Oh yeah. So see, here's some of the cartoons that Ruby Spears did. They did the Plastic Man cartoon, which I loved. Thundarr the Barbarian, which I mentioned. They did a cartoon about Rubik's Cube, Rubik the Amazing Cube. And also they brought back Alvin and the Chipmunks, the 80s version.
Oh yeah, that was a good
That
one.
was Ruby Spears. And they did the Mr. T cartoon.
Oh yeah. That was
Mr.
killer.
T, da-da-da-da. And my shit, the Centurions. They did that shit.
Nice.
Ruby Spears. But yeah, those guys initially were just writers for Hanna-Barbera.
Well, and then I know you're going to get to Takamoto.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Okay.
getting
All
to that. I'm getting to that.
Because
Yeah.
we're going to talk about development. That
Yeah.
guy had a heavy hand in this.
Yes, he did. Now, the treatment of the actual show, based on the Archie show, they changed it up and they changed the name from House of Mystery to Mysteries 5. And they're supposed to have 5 teenagers. Jeff, Mike, Kelly, Linda's brother, WW, and their bongo-playing dog, Too Much. That was the initial name of the dog.
He was too much.
Yeah, and that's a play on the saying back in the day. Man, you are too much. Like if you did something cool, you are too much, man. Too much. So there's some silly shit like that.
Silly as hell, man.
Yeah. Now, while they were not, performing gigs as a musical band, the Mysteries 5 was supposed to go out and solve mysteries, going up against ghosts and zombies and other supernatural creatures. Now, they weren't able to decide initially if they wanted Too Much to be a cowardly dog, a big cowardly dog, or small feisty one.
Well, and they were originally looking for a sheepdog.
Yes, they were. Yeah.
That's what they're leaning on at first.
But it would have been too similar to the Archie's dog, Hot Dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they decided to change it up, and they made it a Great Dane. Now,
which is killer for the physical comedy aspect. Because if it was a little dog, like even like My Little Bulldog, that I'm sure folks maybe heard once or twice in the background when we're doing watch-alongs.
That fucking heavy-ass breathing dog, yeah. That one?
Hey, Mochi's an awesome dog.
You hear that shit? That's his dog.
He's excited because
it's not us.
He's all about you.
It's not either one of us being excited about the movie. It's that damn dog. Oh my God.
But anyway, the physicality of a dog that size, especially with all the gags, the visual gags they get, it just wouldn't be there. Mm-hmm. You got to have something that's the same size as the rest of your characters.
Now, initially, when they changed it from a sheepdog to a Great Dane, they were afraid that it was going to be too similar to Marmaduke, the comic strip dog.
Yeah, but Marmaduke's not a Great Dane. He's a
Great Dane.
Is he?
Yes, Marmaduke is a Great Dane.
I gotta look at those drawings again. It didn't look like a Great Dane to me.
It was Great Dane, in the same color thing, brown and everything.
See, I always thought it was a boxer.
Nope.
Great Dane.
Great Dane, yep. But
his face was pushed in more.
They decided, you know what? Fuck it, let's just go ahead and go with the Great Dane. Now, since you brought up Takamoto, let's go ahead and go into Takamoto since you brought him up.
Yeah. Oh, you want me to go?
Yes, I want you to do it.
I was trying not to step on your toes.
No, you got it. Go for it.
Okay, so Takamoto consulted with a studio colleague who actually was a breeder of the Great Danes to try to kind of get an idea, make sure that he was heading in the right direction. And actually, he learned kind of the prize-winning characteristics of a Great Dane from this colleague at the studio. Broke a bunch of the rules and kind of the way they designed, giving him kind of overly bowed legs, a double chin, the slope back, and some other abnormalities. But it ultimately led to this iconic look, which actually helped with the differentiation from Marmaduke. I'm still floored on that. In my brain, I always thought Marmaduke was going to be a damn boxer.
Great Dane, man. Yeah. Large Great Dane. Now, when they went for this second pass, they decided to use another show from the early 50s and 60s, The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. That was a basis for the main teenagers themselves. Now, for those of you who don't know, The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis was a show where this teenage guy, he would always start out each show having like internal monologue, talking to the audience, and he would always be sitting next to this giant statue of the thinker. And he would be in the same position, and then the camera would pan, and he would be in the same position, and that would start the episode. Now, most of the characters of Dobie Gillis were the exact templates for each of the main teenagers.
Yeah.
Now, Dobie Gillis himself was basically the visual reference for Fred, who was initially Jeff, but then they changed it to Ronnie. But then, like, kind of to really kick over this whole thing with fucking Fred Silverman. Hey, Fred Silverman, we got this character. I think we should call him Fred. Fred, huh? That's a good name. Yeah.
It's so funny the shit that happens behind the scenes in development hell.
Yeah. So Fred from Scooby Doo is named after the executive that literally lit Scooby Doo, Fred Silverman.
And you know what? That's not even remotely the most disgusting display of suckassery that has happened to get something made in this town.
But yeah, so they changed up basically all the different names and different characters. Now Kelly, in the initial thing of the Mysteries 5 pitch, Kelly became Daphne, Linda became Velma, WW became Shaggy, and they got rid of. There was another character named Mike. They just got rid of him altogether.
You don't need Mike. You got Scooby.
You really don't. Yeah. Now the teenagers themselves, like I said, the actual look they were based on each of the characters of Dobie Gillis. Now Fred looks wise is based on Dobie Gillis himself. Daphne is based on a character named Thalia. Velma is based on a character named Zelda, and this is the best one. Shaggy is based on a character named Maynard G. Krebs. Now, for those of you who don't know, Maynard G. Krebs on that show was actually like Dobie Gillis's best friend, and he was supposed to be what they called back in the day a beatnik. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So he said a lot of like and man in his conversation, which was unusual for the 50s and 60s. So
it was what eventually morphed into hippies.
Exactly. So, but yeah.
They're the grandfathers of the hippies.
But they were beatniks first. So like hipsters now were beatniks back then.
Yeah. I mean, we still have hippies though.
No, I'm talking about more specifically hipsters, where they kind of like they're cool.
You just mean like in the way they're kind of treated in general by the public? Because I was gonna say we still have like the exact same hippie thing with hippies today, but they don't have. I will give you, they don't have the same, for lack of a better term, standing in society.
Yes,
that the hipsters have now. So so maybe that's a way to put it.
That's the way I think of it.
Okay, I'll go.
But also, like, of the characters besides Fred. Maynard P. Krause as a Shaggy's interpretation was like almost spot on, and it has this whole thing like freaking. He had the shaggy hair, and he had the goatee, and he had said like and man, and all this conversation. He had like a little schlubby shirt.
That was the thing that was always weird about his goatee is that it was like a shitty like light goatee that was like in the color of his facial hair or like of his face. I mean, like it was basically just like they added 5 or 6 lines at the bottom to make it look like he was scruffy, even though it's like all skin colored.
Yeah. And another fun fact, you know who played Maynard G. Grubbs on that show?
Well, I didn't know we're getting a casting, but go for it.
Bob Denver. Gilligan from Gilligan's Island is the visual basis for Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. That's who they got it from, fucking Gilligan.
I mean, you get rid of the hat, you give him a goatee.
It's Gilligan. Shaggy is Gilligan.
It's a very similar body type to Olive Oil.
Very similar. Very similar. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Now, this revised show with adding the whole element of Dobie Gillis, they changed the name again to Who's Scared. Mm-hmm. So it's like Who's, like, and 2 S's, 2 or 3 S's for Scared. Now, they pitched it to CBS. The intention was for it to be the centerpiece of the upcoming 69-70 season, but they actually
specifically for Saturday morning, because what we're really discussing is the genesis of Saturday morning cartoons, which, as we're going to get to in a moment, Scooby-Doo became the centerpiece of, and in many ways still is today.
Mm-hmm. Yes, true. But the CBS president at the time, Frank Stanton, thought the artwork that they produced for the show was too scary for viewers because it was like very straight-laced and it didn't really have the comedy elements that the show would be known for. So he actually passed on it again.
Well, back to development hell.
Back to development hell again. Now, Silverman went back to Ruby and Spears and Hanna-Barbera and told them to kind of tone down the whole presentation and better reflect some of his comedy elements. They dropped the whole element of them being a rock band altogether, which is good. And they
although it never did answer why they're just driving around in a van together.
Not at all. They just not at all. But
that's what we do.
It's just like it down, yeah. And then they decided to focus more on Shaggy and the dog too much.
I mean, there was no internet back then. No. So, I mean, what else are you going to do on a Saturday night in Wisconsin or something?
Solve some mysteries, man.
Yeah, let's go get something to eat.
Yeah, and solve mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
But then, as they do this revision, they decide they want to change the name of the dog too much. Now, Fred Silverman, the legend has it that he's actually on a plane, kind of dejected after the whole rejection of this storyline again, and like he's sitting there listening to music, particularly Frank Sinatra's recording of "Strangers in the Night."
Yeah,
strangers in the night, exchanging glances. I can't say no more. But yeah, that song.
It wasn't bad.
No, it wasn't.
It was all right.
Thank you. But at the very end of the song, Frank Sinatra does a jazz scat, and the jazz scat goes doobie doobie doo. Do 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 do. I actually listened to it on the way over here. Yeah, but yeah, freaking like, and that's where he got the inspiration for the name Scooby Doo from Frank Sinatra.
Look, if you don't listen to Frank Sinatra when you write and you work, you're missing out.
Yeah. So with all these changes, they changed the name of the dog to Scooby Doo, and they changed the name of the show to Scooby Doo. Where are you? And with this whole revision, then it finally got passed, and they're like, you know what? Make it. Let's do this.
Green light.
Green light, baby. Green light. Yeah. I really, really did it. And also, another thing they would do in terms of the core premise of Scooby-Doo is they added another little series to it. There was a book series in England called Famous Five, and it basically the whole thing of the series is 4 kids and their dog. Same thing, around a mystery each week, where the mystery will not turn out to be the supernaturally based thing that it was supposed to be. It would turn out to be a fraud, and they would end up revealing the true villain's intent every show. So they decided to use that for Scooby-Doo.
Which, I mean, as anyone who's watched Scooby-Doo knows that's as much a staple as a Scooby snack.
Yeah, very much so.
And implied nature of why Scooby and Shaggy are always hungry.
Mm-hmm.
There may or may not have been some illegal drug use, but that comes a little bit later.
I'm going to get into that a little bit later. Now that they had the greenlit the show, they decided to define the roles a little bit more. Fred became the leader and the determined detective. Velma became the intelligent analyst of the group. Daphne became the danger-prone damsel in distress. Shaggy and Scooby. Shaggy was basically just a coward who was more he was more concerned about finding food than solving anything. Yeah, and Scooby was basically the exact same as Shaggy, except that Scooby would have momentary moments of like temporary bravery.
Yeah,
which were comical. And,
always.
Yes.
Well, and the other thing that was kind of interesting too is that as it developed with that first portion, it became more and more apparent that even though Scooby's with everyone, he's really Shaggy's dog.
True.
Right? Because you always see, because they're, and it's one of those personality things you can argue. It can also just be the way that they behave. Like Scooby will help everybody else, but it's always about Shaggy. Where's Shaggy? If Shaggy's not there, that's the problem.
Like Raggy? Yeah, it's always right Raggy. It's always right Raggy.
Yep. Which I can't wait to get into the casting side because this is interesting.
Well, actually, that's what we're about to get into. Now, the very first episode of Scooby-Doo aired on September 13th, 1969, and the first episode was What a Night for a Night, the night thing.
Night with a K.
Yeah. Now, the original cast of Scooby-Doo, first off, Don Messick, veteran voice actor, was the voice of Scooby-Doo. Now, Don Messick was a staple for Hanna-Barbera in their early days.
Oh, yeah.
He was the voice of Boo Boo. He was the voice of Benton Quest on Johnny Quest. He was Dr. Benton Quest. He was the voice of several different characters on several different cartoons. And he would have a variety of voices. They would be like small and cowardly, or they would be big and heroic. Yeah. And also, one thing that he did before he did Scooby-Doo, dog-related, Astro on the Jetsons. He's the voice of Astro.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And you can see Astro's like speech patterns and growling and shit, sort of like proto Scooby.
Yeah, as I say, it's not that far off, and if you watch it knowing, you'll pick up on it a lot more.
Proto Scooby. And funny enough, since we're talking about the cartoons that they canceled, there was a cartoon called Moby Dick that they did. It was one of the ones that was too violent. And on that, there was two kids, and they would travel around with this giant superhero version of Moby Dick. And they had a pet seal named Scooby. And this was like in 66. The show Scooby-Doo didn't come around until 69.
You know, one thing I gotta say before we get too far away from it.
Yeah.
I still very much love the fact that they managed to bring back Space Ghost for our generation as a talk show host. Mm-hmm. That was freaking brilliant, but that's a whole nother episode.
Don Messick did a lot of voices on Space Ghost too.
Yep.
But now, since we talked about Don Messick, that's the first voice we'll talk about. The second voice, Casey Kasem.
What? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, legendary radio DJ Casey Kasem was the voice of Shaggy. Yeah.
That was the one I was more like going, well, first of all, unless you're a student of history, you're going to be like, huh? Mm-hmm. Unless your parents were crazy for him.
Right.
But, I mean, like, talk about a freaking staple. Like, he was, what's the old boy's name from American Idol?
Simon Cowell?
No, the host.
Ryan Seacrest.
He was Ryan Seacrest before Ryan Seacrest was Ryan Seacrest.
Yeah, he was that host. Yeah. The top, the fucking what he did, the top 40, the American top 40. Yeah. Hey, this is Casey Kasem. That shit. But he had that deep, radio person voice, and like he's in Ghostbusters. Yep. Casey Kasem. Yeah, and his wife is too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's another story.
Yeah.
Now
we could go down a million rabbit trails. We'll never get done.
Now I'm gonna get to the two other actresses first. Nicole Jaffe was the voice of Velma, and a musician named Indira Stefania Christensen, I believe her name was Daphne. Mm-hmm. But the last voice and the more important voice in terms of like longevity, Frank Welker as Fred. Mm-hmm. Now Frank Welker basically was a stand-up comedian who was like he's sort of like Frank Gorshin.
Okay, yeah.
He would do impressions and different things like that. He would be on different talk shows doing impressions and stuff. But this is what really kind of kicked his career off. And since we're talking about that, Frank Welker is still doing Fred today.
Yep.
Started in 1969, still doing Fred now.
It's what we like to refer to
in
as
2020.
job security.
Yes, sir. And he sounded the exact same throughout those years. It's like 50 years. He sounds exactly the same.
Yep.
Which is crazy when you think about it. And, I mean, some of the early shit you can hear like a little higher pitched voice, but that's just a natural age. But the general voice of Fred.
Well, and the other thing too is I'm not sure. I don't know 100% sure if he was or was not a smoker, but considering Hollywood in 1969, the fact that this guy started doing it then, whether he smoked or not, he was around so much of it for the first 25 to 30 years of his work. The fact that didn't affect it, because I mean, you can hear like Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
When you see him do stand up right now, you watch his old stuff, you hear his voice now. It's got that grizzled stuff from all those years of smoking and everything. He's got that grizzly, rough smoker's voice, that gravel going on.
Like the Lucille Ball shit.
Yeah, exactly. But you listen to him, Fred sounds like Fred.
Exactly. He sounds exactly the same.
Maybe it's vocal cord scraping.
Now, fun fact, the original theme song for Scooby-Doo was not the legendary Scooby-Doo, Where Are You that we know. It was actually just an instrumental. But that instrumental can be heard in every episode of Scooby-Doo, especially the early ones. That dun, 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 dun. That's the original theme song of Scooby-Doo.
You know what? After you've paid for it, use it.
Yeah, so but it's a more fast pace. Dun, 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 dun. That was the original theme song of Scooby-Doo.
I love it when you do the dun-duns.
Yeah, I know. It works, though.
It does.
But the actual theme song itself was actually written by David Mook and Ben Rayleigh and sung by Larry Marks for the first season. Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? We got some work to do now. I love that damn song. Great one. It's just one of the great TV theme songs ever.
It really has.
Yes. But they actually remade the theme song for the second season with this new artist named Austin Roberts. It's kind of like having like their own private, like David Cassidy. He had a teeny bopper type voice, and he would do a lot of bubblegum pop. So yeah, he redid it, and also they added a lot of pop songs to the show in the second season, where they would do like chases and they would do like a pop song while they did the chase and shit. I'm gonna get into that a little bit later.
Which is still kind of a wink and a nod to the original band sequence side of things.
Now, as we mentioned before, Ken Spears and Joe Ruby are the supervisors of the stories for most of Scooby-Doo, and they're the ones that come up with the Scooby-Doo formula. And the Scooby-Doo formula, which is basically every fucking episode, goes as such. The gang is driving in the Mystery Machine, returning to or coming from their teen hangout, usually the malt shop.
Yep.
Their van breaks down, usually from whatever reason, like overheating, flat tire,
which
out of gas.
Probably the single most realistic thing about this.
Yeah.
Is that a bunch of teenagers will be all piling into a vehicle, one vehicle, and that vehicle would be so shitty it breaks down all the time.
And all the time. And then, but whenever it would break down, it would usually be in the immediate vicinity of a vacated property, usually a ski lodge, a hotel, a factory, a mansion. And then they would find out that a said destination has a monster problem. Either a ghost, a yeti, a vampire, a witch.
Swamp monster.
Swamp monster. And then the gang decides to volunteer to investigate the case. Now, as they start, they usually split up. Let's split up gang. And it's usually Fred and Daphne going off somewhere. And then Velma. Occasionally Velma would go with them, but most of the time she was with Shaggy and Scooby. Fred and Velma are usually the ones that find the clues. Daphne ends up getting kidnapped or some shit throughout the whole thing.
Which at some point you'd think they'd leave her home.
Exactly, yeah. And they have a nickname for her, Danger Prone Daphne, because it keeps happening. And then Scooby and Shaggy are just looking for food.
Yeah.
They're looking for food. They usually end up being the ones that find the monster, and the monster usually chases them the most.
Well, at least first, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely first. Yeah.
Well, and then Velma always loses her damn glasses.
My glasses. Yeah. And then eventually they find enough clues to convince them that the monster or whatever is fake. Fred comes up with this complex ass trap to try to catch the monster, but usually ends up fucking up. And in the end, Scooby is the one that usually ends up, catching the monster either through trial or error or through, like I said, temporary.
One of those like Rube Goldberg kind of traps.
And then he has like that little moment of temporary bravery. And he catches the monster and shit. Now they usually call the local sheriff or the police or whatever to come by, and then Of course, the famous thing, they unmask the person.
Let's see who this really is.
And then it comes to find out it's like some person that they actually encountered at the beginning of the mystery. Usually some local or some people like, oh, don't go in there. That place is haunted. You know, that kind of shit. Yeah. I wouldn't go in there if I were you. And then that person disappears. And then the rest of the story, they're chasing this monster. They catch the monster, kind of find out it's the same dude. And they're trying to like, usually the usual scheme is usually extortion. Yeah. They're trying to get some money out of some shit.
Yeah, they're either trying to get the property condemned so they can turn it into whatever they're going to turn it into, or they're trying to find some sort of way to scare people off so that they can go and mine something that was left there, whatever it is.
Yeah, and then I'm going to give this to you. As they're being taken away, what is the famous phrase that all the bad guys usually say as they're being led away by the cops?
And I would have gotten away with it, too, if it hadn't been for you meddling kids. They always have to say it like some 1920s detective. It hadn't been for you meddling kids.
Yeah, and then they go off to their next adventure. That is the Scooby-Doo formula, and it's tried and true, and it works.
For pretty much every single episode.
Yes! Every single one.
Yeah.
And the monster may change, the locale may change, the circumstances may change, but it's always that same set of beats.
Without getting too far ahead, the single greatest improvement for Scooby-Doo across the board has been the nature and style of the animation. It all still goes back to the original from '69, but because everything was CGI and all of that's kind of changed the nature of how animation's done, the quality has increased.
Yeah. Now, since we mentioned that before, Scooby-Doo was a ratings monster. It was a huge success. They actually said the Nielsen ratings stated that as much as 65% of the Saturday morning cartoon audience were watching Scooby-Doo. That's huge. And then, of course, it was renewed on the second season with 8 episodes. And then the whole thing of how influential that show is, Scooby-Doo pretty much set the standard for Hanna-Barbera for the 70s. Pretty much for all the Saturday morning cartoons for the 70s.
Well, I mean, I think you can push it into at least mid-80s.
Yeah.
Until you start getting into stuff like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
But for the Scooby-Doo template was copied God knows how many times. I actually have a couple here in terms of how they would do it. So what they would do is they would have a cartoon with a group of teenage detectives solving a mystery, and they usually have a pet or some kind of mascot. The first one they had was Josie and the Pussycats, which is actually another one of those Archie-based comic books, but they added the element of pretty much the original thing they were trying to go for was Scooby-Doo, where they were a rock band, but between gigs they would solve mysteries. And so they had that.
As you'd expect from, Josie and the Pussycats.
Then they had another one, the Funky Phantom.
That one didn't have the same legs.
Same thing. It was a group of teenagers, but their mascot was a fucking ghost from the from the Revolutionary War, and he had a ghost cat. And then the funny thing about it is the ghost sounded exactly like Snagglepuss.
Yeah, it was basically like the cartoon version of that ill-fated what was it, Rain, I think, sort of was called, with Jeff Goldblum.
Yes, I know.
Where it's like, why are we watching something with a ghost solving mysteries? Like, don't they have cooler stuff to do?
Yeah, it's Funky Phantom time even. but he even did the Heavens to Murgatroyd and all that shit.
Heavens to Murgatroyd.
Hello, even exit state. It was basically Snagglepuss.
It's exactly what it was.
Different. It was a ghost, but a Snagglepuss. The Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan, which is actually notable because of the fact it was the first cartoon with an exclusively Asian cast.
Yeah.
And it was basically they took the old Charlie Chan serials from like the 30s, and they incorporated it to the 70s thing, and they had the great detective Charlie Chan solving mysteries. With him, his group of kids, he had like a dozen children. And they were all together. They had a little band and shit, and they also had a van that if you press a button in the van, it turns into like different types of vehicles. You press a button.
Sort of like an Inspector Gadget kind of thing?
You press a button, it turns into a fire truck. You press another button, it turns into a helicopter. You press another button. It was really weird. But the Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan. Speed Buggy was another one. Where basically the same thing, group of teenagers, but the mascot here is a talking car.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
It would do stuff like that. And it was Mel Blanc. That was Speed Buggy.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was Mel.
Looney Tunes, Mel Blanc was Speed Buggy. He's actually another one on here, too. But
that's all, folks.
And then his mechanic, Tinker, looks exactly like Shaggy. Except the fact he wears like a race car getup. But it's basically Shaggy. They had one called Goober and the Ghost Chasers, basically just a blue dog and some teenagers. There wasn't much to that one. Jabberjaw, which is a favorite of mine. Same thing, group of teenagers, rock band, except they changed it up because like this is right after Jaws came out.
Yeah.
So they had this like underwater, like it's supposed to be in the future. They had this like underwater city. The kids were like this group called the Neptunes, and they would solve mysteries. And their mascot was a giant talking shark. But the voice of the shark acted and sounded exactly like Curly from the Three Stooges.
Yeah.
And it was Frank Welker. That was Jabba Jaw. Yeah. And the last one of what I have here, and another favorite of mine, Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels. Another one, Mel Blanc, was Captain Caveman.
You know, one thing that I'd say is probably most notable about all of these pretenders,
Bunga bunga.
aside from that,
I had to throw that in there.
none of them really lasted more than about a year, except for Captain Caveman made it 3.
Yeah.
Everybody else is just like, it was a one and done. They were trying, they just couldn't catch that lightning.
A lot of people myself included, love Captain Caveman.
Well, and look, in all of these ones, for the most part, you've mentioned, they actually did stand the test of time in that people still watch them today. They're still out there. They still have a life.
Yeah.
They just couldn't get the ratings up against Scooby, and you know, they unfortunately had a short run.
Captain Caveman.
You know what I'm going to blame it on mostly?
What?
It's before the repeal of the FinCEN rules.
True.
Because if this had been post-FinCEN and this stuff was being set up by a studio or by, actually, it was television, right? So by a broadcaster, network, they would have pushed it to the 100 episodes. They'd be like, this is good enough. We can push it across the finish line.
So the original series, Scooby-Doo Where Are You, lasted for about 2 years, from like 69 to around like 71. Then they came up with a new show for Scooby. The new Scooby-Doo movies from 72 to 73. Now, what was different between this show was that instead of one half-hour episode, it was a one extended hour-long episode. Yep. And they also added a guest star. It's the same show, hour long, and they added a guest star. And the guest star was usually a celebrity. Or like usually they were real world celebrities, or they were animated figures from like Hanna-Barbera or like other companies and whatnot. Now, this is actually the last show for Scooby-Doo that aired on CBS. We'll get into that a little bit more later. Now, some of the guest stars that they had on the show.
Who's your favorite?
Dude, like, okay, so for most of you kids out there, most of these kids are not going to know who the hell most of these people are.
They're going to know who some of these guys are.
You got to be at least 30 years old to know who most of these people are.
They might be big Scooby fans. They could have listened to it.
I'm just saying, though. Okay, so I'm gonna go down some of the list of some of the people that.
But before you go too far on the list, who's your favorite?
My favorite episodes of that shit was the ones with Batman and Robin.
Yeah, that's mine too. This is why we're doing this.
Boom, that's my favorite. The ones with Batman and Robin, because they were dope. But real quick, actually going back to the original one, Scooby-Doo Where Are You? My favorite episode of that show is Jeepers, It's the Creeper.
Yeah, that one was pretty good.
That's one of the few like Scooby-Doo monsters that is actually carried throughout the generations.
Yeah.
But
it's because especially Velma and the way she does it.
Yeah.
That it's too good, the alliteration.
Plus, I love the things. The chase song that they have in there is probably my favorite one. Like, daydreaming, head in the sand. It's so weird. I fell in love with an ostrich. And if you never tried it, don't deny it, my friend. Because it's so much fun. Going out in the sun, forget the rest of the world, and stick your head in the sand. It's such a weird song. And then they get chased by this monster. Creeper. He just kept saying, creeper, creeper. That's all he said. But going back to the new Scooby-Doo movies, the guest stars included Don Knotts from the Andy Griffith Show and Three's Company.
Although I really did like Don Knotts as a close second for me.
Yeah.
But it's because I love his weird way of talking to everything.
And then the sniff.
He's got the sniff. He's got that kind of like, shit, how do you even do it? It's sort of like, well, I don't know. What you doing there? Whoa. Everything always sounds like he's having like a deep internal problem.
My name's Barney Fife. The sniff. I always love the sniff from Barney Fife.
Well, Andy.
Yeah, just that ridiculous authority figure.
But it's that shaking voice is part of what gets me. Because his voice always sounded like he's in the middle of an earthquake.
And of course, Mr. Furley in the 70s, and like with the crazy 70s fucking outfits and shit. Going back to it, Jerry Reed, the Snowman from Smokey and the Bandit. was a guest star. Cass Elliot from the Mamas and the Papas.
Yep.
You know, like California Dreaming. Yeah, that group. Jonathan Winters. Sandy Duncan.
Yeah.
Like the only thing I ever watched of Sandy Duncan's was when she took over from Valerie Harper on the Hogan Family.
Yeah.
With Jason Bateman. Yeah. So Tim Conway, the great Tim Conway, Dick Van Dyke, and Sonny and Cher.
You also forgot Harlem Globetrotters.
I was actually about to get into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I'm talking about the ones, the real world people at the time.
Okay,
you know what I'm
okay.
saying? So, but Sonny and Cher.
Harlem Globetrotters are real. I've seen them.
Yeah, and then Cher actually did her voice. The great Cher actually did her voice on the cartoon. But then, like I said, they will also have celebrities who had actually died or had retired already, like the Three Stooges and Laurel and Hardy, but they were done by impersonators. And also, like I said, they had crossovers with Hanna-Barbera cartoons. That's why I was saving the Globetrotters, because Globetrotters had a cartoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like same thing. I think it's the same thing. First cartoon with a primarily black cast, the Harlem Globetrotters, and they same thing. They would go around the world playing basketball and solving mysteries.
As you would.
It's even in the theme song. Going around the world and playing basketball. They had a dope singing song.
It did.
Globetrotters. And then they also had a crossover with Josie and the Pussycats, Speed Buggy, and another show, Genie. That was another one of those short-lived Hanna-Barbera shows, which is basically like a teenage version of I Dream of Jeannie. Yeah. And then what was notable about that show, it had Mark Hamill.
Oh, yeah. He's been doing voice acting for so much longer than people
This was
realize.
his first voice acting gig, was on Genie. He was one of the kids on Genie. And like I said, they credit that in that show. And then another couple of other cartoons actually will go on to have their own cartoon. It's sort of like a spinoff of this one. The Addams Family. Yep. They had an Addams Family cartoon that came out.
I was worried we were going to get to that.
Yeah, the Addams Family, which they had the original cast from the original show. Yeah. And then actually the cartoon... Wednesday on the cartoon was voiced by Jodie Foster.
Really?
Yeah. So
I didn't realize that.
It was Jodie Foster, yep. And then the Batman and Robin, which we both have mentioned, that would eventually, that interpretation of Batman and Robin would eventually spin off and become part of the Super Friends.
Dude, something that I saw the other day made me just bust up laughing. It was the 90s version of Batman. And Alfred was talking and says, "Sir, why do you wear dark clothes?" He goes, "So people won't shoot at me." He says, "Well, why does Robin wear bright clothes?" Batman goes, "So people won't shoot at me."
Yeah. Actually, they do a joke about that on Tiny Toons. Decoy, the pig hostage.
Yeah, basically.
Was basically the Hampton Pig character in a Robin costume, but instead, like his chest insignia is just a giant target.
Yeah, I remember that.
Decoy, the pig hostage.
We could do a Tiny Toons one.
We're going to do a Tiny Toons one.
Dude, there's a couple of cartoons, not to get too far off in the weeds for half a second, but there's a few cartoons that now as an adult, I understand, number one, why my parents didn't want me watching when I was young. Yeah. And number two, they're so fucking funny. It's so far ahead of their time.
Yeah, and then like
oh my God, Ren and Stimpy.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't figure out when I was a kid why my mom had a problem with it, because I was watching it at like 8 years old. And then I was watching, did you see that one where Ren has the saw and he's like sawing the piece of wood that's shoved between Stimpy's butt cheeks?
Yes.
It's that weird thing. My mom's like, "Oh, you shouldn't be watching that." At the time, I didn't get it, but now I'm like,
what about Don't Whiz on the electric fence? Where he actually fucking zips down, whips his dick out, and pisses on a game, and they explode. Dude. Don't Whiz on the electric fence. All right, but going back to this cartoon, like I said, it had Mark Hamill and one of his first forays into voice acting. Also, in terms of the actual celebrities themselves, Don Knotts is the one celebrity who had the most appearances. He did like 2 episodes.
Dude,
and
that's a guy with a voice for cartoons.
Yes, he is. And of the other cartoons, in terms of the one who appeared on there the most, the Harlem Globetrotters.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were on them the most. Now, after this show, like I said, this is the last one that actually aired on CBS because of the fact Fred Silverman left CBS and moved to ABC.
Well,
and guess what he took with him?
What do you do when you lose your benefactor?
Yeah.
You follow him.
Exactly. He took Scooby-Doo with him to ABC. Now, about 3 years after the end of the new Scooby-Doo movies, they produced a new show, the Scooby-Doo Show on ABC, and that was the first of the long run of Scooby-Doo up until like 91.
Yep.
Yeah. Now the Scooby-Doo show is basically the same exact thing as like Scooby-Doo Where Are You, just had a new name to it. The only difference was they added a new character, Scooby-Doo's cousin, Scooby-Dum. A white Great Dane who was like supposed to be like this dumb Southerner, which I hate that shit. I'm a Southerner, and the fact that every time you put a Southerner in a cartoon or some shit, he's supposed to be dumb. Like, fuck y'all, man. The Southerners are not dumb. I'm sorry. There are some.
Well, I was going to say, to be fair,
there are some, but
a
not
big
all,
enough group of people.
But not all Southerners are dumb. I'm sorry.
No, in fact, I'm going to say most of them aren't.
Exactly. So it's bullshit to me.
And where our viewership or our listenership just went up in Alabama. So there we go.
As it should have, yeah. Now, like I said, with the Scooby-Doo show, they pretty much made it a package deal, the Scooby-Doo Dino-Mutt Hour. Now, with this, they introduced a new character also inspired by Scooby-Doo, Dino-Mutt, Dog Wonder.
Mm-hmm.
Again, voiced by Frank Welker. So he was pulling triple duty on he's doing double duty on the show because he would do he did Fred, he did Dino-Mutt, and then he would occasionally do voices like ancillary characters. So Fred Welker was all over that thing, man.
But to be fair, the way the animation production process worked back then, I mean, they were lucky to do more than 8 episodes a season. So, I mean, his days were pretty free.
Yeah.
I mean, we weren't in a situation where he's sitting there going like, man, I just can't do another 12-hour day. It's like, even with all of those shows, I would be surprised if he was doing 40 hours a week.
Now, yeah,
he was working on other stuff.
Now, Dino-Mutt, like I said, was a new cartoon that they wanted to introduce. They, like I said, the best way to introduce a new cartoon, put it alongside, of established favorites, Scooby-Doo. So, Dino-Mutt was about this cartoon canine mechanical dog, robot dog. But the thing about it is, all his mechanics would always fuck up. And he had a partner, Blue Falcon, a real superhero, and Blue Falcon.
That always cracks me up.
Yeah, Blue.
Again, talk about things you learn when you're grown up.
Yeah, Blue Falcon. Yeah, he's a military thing too, Blue Falcon. But Blue Falcon was actually voiced by Gary Owens, who was the voice of Space Ghost.
Yeah.
And the thing about it was, like, Blue Falcon and Dog Wonder would go out solving mysteries and shit. Stop. He keeps laughing at every time I say Blue Falcon.
All I'm gonna say is Google it.
Yeah, look up Blue Falcon, man. Yeah, but they would solve mysteries, and like, of course, Dino-Mutt's mechanics will fuck up whenever they're chasing a bad guy. And like, same thing with Scooby-Doo, Dino-Mutt will usually inevitably be the one that actually catches the bad guy in each episode. But the thing about it was,
I'm just imagining like 8-year-old and 7-year-old kids running around saying, "I'm Blue Falcon."
Stop.
Go for it.
There's another thing in the military about Blue Falcons.
Oh god.
The BF is a buddy fucker. So if you like, you fuck your buddies up, yeah, you're a buddy fucker.
Yeah.
You're a Blue Falcon. And and they actually did several crossovers with Mystery Inc. So they did Scooby-Doo and all those guys did a bunch of episodes. In fact, the very first episode of Dino-Mutt is a crossover between them and Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
And that character also comes back, a character called Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
Another one of those characters that comes back for that shit. Now, the next cartoon after that was one of my personal favorites, because this is like, it used to air it on the USA. Scooby-Doo's All-Star Laugh Olympics. Yeah. And this was actually supposed to be a spoof of the Olympics, but more accurately, it was a spoof of Battle of the Network Stars.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, because apparently it just aired the year before, so I think they had like Linda Carter and all this shit, just basically a bunch of female celebrities with no bras, that kind of thing. Lou Ferrigno, going up against like Tom Selleck and shit like that kind of thing. But they used the Hanna-Barbera characters. They used actually 45 characters from the Hanna-Barbera library, and they encompassed 3 teams that would win the gold, silver, and bronze each week. The first team was the Scooby-Doobies. Now, the Scooby-Doo was basically all the cartoons that were inspired during the Scooby-Doo time, all the mystery-solving cartoons. So it had Scooby, Shaggy, they had like, Scooby-Dum, Dino-Mutt, Blue Falcon, again, Captain K-Man and the Teen Angels, Hong Kong Phooey, all those characters. Now, they actually were supposed to have like Genie and a couple of the other characters like Josie and the Pussycats and shit, but they were actually owned by different companies. Yeah. So they wouldn't allow those characters to be used.
Licensing.
Yes, sir. Now, the next team, which is the more traditional Hanna-Barbera people, the Yogi Yahoos. Led by Yogi Bear. So it's Yogi Bear, Boo Boo, fucking Huckleberry Hound, Pixie and Dixie. What was it? Wally Gator, all those characters. I think the only character made past 1960 that was on the team was Grape Ape.
You mean 1970 or 1960?
1960.
Oh, it's still all the old guys.
Yeah, all the old ones.
I mean, I love Huckleberry Hound.
Yeah, I love Grape Ape. Grape Ape, Grape Ape. The giant purple gorilla. Yeah. Now, the last team was the Really Rottens. And they're basically comprised of all bad guys. Now, most of these bad guys were original characters created just for this show. A couple of them appeared on a couple other cartoons. Like, there's a couple of them that were like on Quick Draw McGraw. I think there's one on the Flintstones or whatever. But the leaders of the team was supposed to be initially Dick Dastardly and Muttley. However, due to licensing, they could not get Dick Dastardly and Muttley, so they created two characters that were basically the same thing.
Rip-off.
Yeah, Mumbly and the Dread Baron.
Yeah.
So it's the same shit though, same look, and then the same thing.
They even sounded the same.
The dog.
Yeah, that weird laugh.
The Muttley laugh, man. But yeah, I always loved it because like when you watch the different cartoons and shit, like usually the winners were always the Scooby Doobies and the Yogi Yahoos, but every once in a while the Really Rottens will win one.
Yep.
Usually they're cheating, but they will win one.
Well, you got to do that to keep some kind of suspense. I mean, look, even if you're doing content for kids, 'cause let's be honest, that's especially what this was. This is way before anyone thought about doing cartoons for adults. Kids are smart. They're going to get it, and they're going to get bored if every time it's the exact same thing. It has to have a little bit of variety.
All right. Now, the next interpretation of Scooby-Doo might be the jump in the shark moment for Scooby-Doo. Well, it could be interpreted as that in some way.
But in order for it to be a true jumping of the shark...
It had to end it, yeah.
Exactly. And this is something we're going to get to. It's still in production today. I mean, I was saving this for a little bit later, but I'm going to throw it out there right now.
Go for it.
I love The Simpsons. I think The Simpsons have had some really great moments, but they can eat their heart out. They have nothing approaching Scooby-Doo when it comes to longevity.
Nope. No, they do not.
I mean, my God.
Yes, 1969.
We're at 51 years now.
51 years. Still on the air.
Rocking and rolling.
Rocking and rolling. Now, like I said, the next interpretation, Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo.
I love Scrappy.
I don't. Now, during this time frame, they felt that the Scooby-Doo formula was kind of becoming a parody of itself because of it was so predictable and shit, and ratings were starting to decline. So they, and then of course Fred Silverman, who was like the big backer of Scooby-Doo, actually left ABC and went to NBC. So they're kind of like we got to do.
The deal they made, you couldn't really just jump off.
Yeah, exactly. So
because they already knew what they were thinking. Like, no, you're not just following Fred around everywhere.
So we got to do a major overhaul here. So they decided to add a new character, Scooby's little nephew, Scrappy-Doo. Now, Scrappy-Doo was like small and feisty, like I said, like one of the original interpretations of what they thought Scooby-Doo would be. But yeah, he's small and feisty, always ready for a fight, and he looked up to his uncle Scooby.
He was like an aggressive boo-boo.
Yeah, very aggressive. Like, let me at him. But he always thought Scooby was his big hero, but Scooby would always prove himself to be a complete coward. Yeah. But again, he would still have those moments of temporary bravery.
He was almost like a Mr. Magoo in how that, like, he would be slightly brave, but even if he wasn't being brave, it was like he accidentally was brave all the time.
Yeah.
He just happened to fall into moments of appearing brave.
But the biggest change to the actual layout of Scooby-Doo was because of the additional Scrappy-Doo, Fred, Daphne, and Velma became less essential to the plot.
Yeah.
And therefore, Scooby, Shaggy, and Scrappy started becoming the main focus to the point where actually...
It was Scrappy and Scooby for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part, those three characters, Fred, Daphne, and Velma, started to be phased out.
Yep.
Completely, almost, yeah. And then after that, they started repackaging the same show again, Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo, but they added different characters. Now, the first repackaging was the Scooby-Doo, Scrappy-Doo, Richie Rich show. So
that's right.
So the same thing, they had the Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo show is the exact same show, except they added a new show again to introduce a new character. When they introduce a new character, put with a staple, Scooby-Doo. In this case, Richie Rich. Mm-hmm. Another one of those damn... No, this is done by Harvey Comics. Same people that make Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Casper. No, I take that back. Sabrina the Teenage Witch was made by Archie. Casper... was it Hot Stuff, the little devil guy, and there's like a little witch.
Right.
And there's a little
right.
witch. They were made by Harvey Comics. Richie Rich is one of them too. But Richie Rich got his own cartoon. He would have his different little adventures and shit. I used to like the Richie Rich show as a kid.
Everybody did, man. You get to imagine being rich.
Yeah, exactly. And then, actually, funny enough, on the Richie Rich show, voice acting gig for Nancy Cartwright. Since we talked about The Simpsons, Bart Simpson. She was his girlfriend, Gloria.
Yeah, well, the funny thing too, if you think about it, because I'm looking at the timing as well, it was kind of like the kids' version of Heart to Heart.
Yeah.
It's basically what it was, because it's like some rich person's got enough money, they just solve crimes and stuff for fun.
I ain't got nothing else to do. Yeah,
it's like, well, I'm set for life. Well, why don't I go and insert myself into these people's lives?
But yeah, this is another one of those hour-long shows where first half would be Scooby-Doo, the second half would be Richie Rich. So, and this is actually the only time that Scooby-Doo actually got second billing after a character. It was the Richie Rich Scooby-Doo show. So then they repackaged Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo again. This time they actually brought back Daphne. And then they kept this central plot of Scooby-Doo, but they reestablished that Scooby, Daphne, Shaggy, and Scrappy-Doo were reporters for a teen magazine.
Well, this is what I think sometimes they refer to as the Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo shorts phase.
Yeah.
Because they're doing all of this crossover side of stuff. And I think probably the other thing that's important to remember right now is this is early 1980s, like 1980 to 82.
Yes.
So, again, looking at the totality of something like a children's cartoon, because that's what it essentially was.
Yeah.
You can still argue, in a lot of ways, still is. 1969 when it started.
Yeah.
So you had 11 years before it started to get to a point where they were going, okay, we need to come up with something.
Yeah. But for a extensive little period there, it was basically just the Scooby-Doo, Scrappy-Doo show. Yep. Now they repackaged it once again in 84 as the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries. Same format as Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo, but they actually brought back Fred and Velma for like a couple like little crossovers and stuff. Yep. And they actually established Fred's last name. Fred's last name is Jones, and Shaggy's last name. They actually established Shaggy's real name. Shaggy's real name is Norville Rogers. Norville.
I like Maynard.
The one thing I do like about this particular cartoon, the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries, is that they had the intro. Because the intro is like very fucking 80s synthesizer. Yeah. It was right after Thriller came out. So
That's right, yeah.
So the actual they basically did a theme song like Thriller, and there's like monsters in the intro doing the Thriller dance.
Yeah.
So I like this one, man. I really do.
Oh, it's pop culture as hell.
Very much so. Yeah. Now this next one, this was actually kind of a crossroads for Scooby-Doo, but it was actually a really good cartoon to me. The 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. Only ran for 13 episodes in 1985, and I like the beginning. This is a warning to all living mortals that whosoever opens this chest of demons will release 13 of the most terrifying ghosts upon the face of the earth. I love that intro,
it's killer, man.
Yeah. Now, in this particular cartoon, same thing. They had the initial crew: Daphne, Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy. Now they actually have a plane, and they actually end up getting hijacked in the Himalayas. And they enter this temple, and Scooby and Shaggy are tricked by two ghosts named Bogle and Weird into opening this box called the Chest of Demons. Now, the Chest of Demons is supposed to be this artifact that houses the 13 most terrifying and powerful ghosts and demons to ever walk the face of the earth. Now, because of the fact Scooby-Doo, how it works is once you release the ghosts, only the people that originally released them
can put them back.
And it happened to be Scooby and Shaggy.
It kind of has an interesting sense towards the Evil Dead.
Yes, it does. And I mean,
less tree rape going on.
Oh God, I forgot about that. That's right, that did happen in Evil Dead.
Oh God, if you've never seen it.
Oh my God, that was so awful.
And what's ridiculous about, I know I keep dragging us down rabbit trails, but you do it sometimes too. So it's
yeah.
The most ridiculous thing about that movie, when you watch it right now, you can totally see it's a group of people who are broke as hell, who have a concept, and they said, you know what, the hell with it, I'm going to make one movie, at least one movie in my life. Somebody had a cabin out in the woods in Michigan or wherever the hell it was, and they're like, fuck it, let's just go for broke.
Let's shoot a movie.
And we're not pulling back, we're going to go all the way, and man, did they.
Yes, they did.
Did you ever see Evil Dead 2?
Yeah, I did.
it's basically the same shit. They just like, hey, this is what we can do with a little bit of money, and then you finally get to the good stuff, which is Army of Darkness.
And then it left it with a cliffhanger and all that shit. Yeah. So
Sam Ash, man. That's another episode.
But going back to the 13 Ghosts, they actually added a couple new characters to that show. First off was a Hispanic young con artist named Flim Flam. And his whole thing is he would basically be like a little showman and wherever he would do like impressions and stuff like that. Always act like he was always trying to bilk somebody out of some shit.
He's
you know what I'm saying? And the last one was his friend, a warlock named Vincent Van Ghoul, voiced and made to look like Vincent Price. And he was actually a cast member on the show, Vincent Price, who also again was the voice of the rapper in Thriller.
They should have taken his ear off and just gone for the Vincent Van Gogh.
Yeah, but yeah, it's Vincent Van Gogh, and actually he does the Thriller laugh in the intro of this show, the 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo, and he actually
that's right.
He does the Thriller. He does the Thriller laugh, and then he's the one that governs the rules, or whatever. Only you can turn the demons to the chest, and like, why us? Because you let them out, and he tries to help them with magic and shit throughout different episodes. Now, funny enough about that show, this is the first show where the monsters and all that shit that they catch were actually real. Yeah.
Sorry, how do you mean in terms of real? Like the pre-existing?
They were actual actual.
Oh, you mean
demons.
like they weren't unmasking?
They weren't unmasking the guy in the mask. There wasn't a guy in the mask. It was actual demons.
I just didn't know
ghosts.
if you're going to start telling us that you have a belief in specific ghosts and demons and things.
I have a belief in the unknown.
Okay,
I will say it like that.
I'm just making sure I understand what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. Now, the funny thing about it was, they produced 13 episodes. They only caught 12 ghosts. They left the 13 ghosts unsolved for years and years and years. Now, funny enough, the executive producer of the show was Tom Ruegger. Now, since we mentioned Tiny Toons, that was the main guy behind Tiny Toons and Animaniacs, and a lot of that humor from those shows is interpreted into the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. It is actually a pretty funny show. Mm-hmm. So, but like I said, they let it last for years and years and years. Like I said, with 13 episodes, this is actually the shortest Scooby-Doo show. Yeah.
Well, I mean, technically, season 1 was only 8 episodes, but I get your point.
Yeah, the shortest Scooby-Doo show. This is the last one to feature Scrappy-Doo.
Right, because this one was set up as a limited run where the other ones had multiple seasons.
Yeah, and actually last year they produced a fucking direct-to-DVD movie, Scooby-Doo and the Curse of the 13 Ghosts. They actually caught the 13 Ghosts last year.
Yes.
And they brought back Vincent Van Gogh and everything.
It might take a while to find that last ghost. The world's a big place.
And then the funny thing about it is Vincent Van Gogh was actually voiced by Bill Hader.
Oh, really?
Because you remember he did the impression of Vincent Price on SNL.
Yeah.
So they used him as the voice of...
Dude, that's killer. I haven't seen that yet. I got to watch that.
Now, they actually make reference to Flim Flam and all this other shit in another episode of another show that we're going to mention a little bit later, Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, that was on Cartoon Network.
Yep.
They show Flim Flam as an adult. So apparently they're like, what happened to you? Apparently Flim Flam's Flim Flam and ended up in a prison sentence. So we see Flim Flam now as a young adult.
Well, that's very adult for children to have to understand. Oh yeah, if you do that long enough, you'll go to jail.
And then and then another thing, they're in a wax museum in the same episode, and there's a statue of Scrappy Doo. And then they're like, oh, they remember him? Like, and Fred says to Daphne, look, remember, we promised never to speak of him again. A Scrappy Doo.
That's where they almost jumped the shark.
Yes, sir. But this next one, again, Tom Ruegger came back. He became executive producer of this one. And this one is actually my first introduction into the world of Scooby-Doo.
I feel like this is everybody's first. I know it was mine.
This is my first one, yeah. A Pup Named Scooby-Doo on ABC from 1988 to 1991. Great cartoon. If you ever get a chance to take a look at it, it's so dope. Now, this cartoon was actually the last cartoon to feature Don Messick as the voice of Scooby-Doo. He will pass away, unfortunately, in 1997. And this is actually the only time, or one of the few times, where they had somebody other than Frank Welker as the voice of Freddy. They had a younger kid as Freddy in this one, but Frank Welker was still on the show as different parts and shit. I think he's the voice of Fred's dad or uncle or some shit.
Okay.
Yeah. Casey Kasem is back as Shaggy. Now, this show is actually part of a trend called babyfication, which we're going to mention in the Tiny Toons one as well.
Yeah.
Now, babyfication in the 80s and 90s was this trend where they would basically take establish like
Classic characters
and make kid versions of them.
Yeah.
The first one was Muppet Babies.
Oh yeah.
That was the very first one. Muppet Babies, and then they had the Flintstone Kids.
Which actually, sorry, just to kind of
Yeah.
swing back around to something we forgot in the news. Jim Henson's son, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he recently passed away as well. I believe he's only 45.
Oh wow!
It's kind of a sad thing for that family, but it seems like, I mean, knowing the kind of schedule those guys work,
Jeez,
is too much. Because if I remember correctly, he followed in his dad's footsteps and
became a puppeteer and all
Yeah.
that. Oh, rest in peace.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, the babyfication. Like I said, they had Muppet Babies, Flintstone Kids, Yo Yogi. What else? Of course, Tiny Toons.
Yep.
And I'm trying to think of any other. Tom and Jerry Kids. They had a couple of them.
Yep.
But yeah, this is one of the more popular ones. And this is the first series to reintroduce Fred and Velma as part of the main cast.
Right.
This one was what?
Well, it's also the first one where they actually established the name of the town the gang's from.
Coolsville.
Coolsville, yeah.
Yeah, they had a town, Coolsville. And then they weren't called Mysteries Inc. on the show. They were called the Scooby-Doo Detective Agency. The whole premise was very similar to the Encyclopedia Brown books, where it's this kid, solving mysteries out of his garage for the local town and stuff. And they would charge like 25 cents a day plus expenses.
Hey, with Scooby and Shaggy, that's going to be some expensive snacks.
Exactly. But yeah, they would catch the monsters and all the different things, like same thing as the original version of Scooby-Doo. But the thing about it was that made this show different was they would add like Tex Avery like fucking takes and stuff. They would do like wild takes and like different it became very, very cartoony on this cartoon. But it was really good, very wacky. Now, like I said, in terms of the interpretation, Shaggy was basically the exact same. They made Daphne this vain rich girl who was always she was the skeptic of the group and was always very sarcastic. And she also had this butler, Jenkins.
Oh, that's right, Jenkins.
And, like every time something would happen, Jenkins, and no matter where they are, Jenkins will come. Yes,
sure.
Yeah. and she would usually ask him to do something real asinine, like, be scared for me. He would be scared for them. And sometimes Scooby would ask for Jenkins.
Yeah.
So, Jenkins would show up too. And then, like she's also kind of a germaphobe. Like she would like they were doing the mystery. All of a sudden she would scream like ah, and they'd be like, what's going on? Dust. There's dust everywhere in here. And then they actually gave her a little catchphrase. Oh my God, there's no such thing as whatever it is at the time. There's no such thing as whatever. And Fred, I love Fred on the show, man. He was so funny. Same thing. He's supposed to be the leader of the group, but they made him a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
And then he actually was he's a fanboy of this magazine called The National Exaggerator, and everything about it is like basically like the
National Enquirer.
The National Enquirer was just a bunch of ridiculously out of this world fucking stories. Like he was always talking about like mole people and aliens from outer space, and every time they would catch a bad guy or like they're on the way of a bad guy, he would always guess that it was this kid named Red Herring.
Yeah.
Another double entendre there, like freaking like, hey, the Red Herring. Yeah. So, but this is actually a bully named Red Herring, and he hated the group and would often bully him. I think it was only one time he was actually the bad guy in this shit.
Yeah.
But more often than not, they would do something, he would get like humiliated, and his catchphrase was, "That's not very funny."
Yeah.
Yeah, Red Herring. Yeah, and then Velma, was pretty much the same thing, but she was much smaller, and she was the computer genius of the group, and she would always have this little briefcase, and it would unload this giant fucking computer. She would just look up clues and shit. And instead of the mystery machine, they didn't have the mystery machine because they were kids, so they had a rocket powered skateboard, which they would all ride on, and usually Velma was the one that drove it. She would always have like the helmet and like this crazy expression on her face when she was driving. It was so funny. Yeah. And then another thing was they added some doo-wop to the show. Yeah, because like it was a very doo-wop thing because Little Shop of Horrors had just come out.
Oh yeah.
That's what they were inspired by. So like it was very doo-wop, that kind of shit. And they would always add the music to the chase scene. In fact, like they would go out of the way to say, "All right, chase time," and they would like somebody would break out like a boombox and they would start playing the song and start getting chased. And then
they always do the multiple door thing and everything.
Yeah, and then they always do like a dance break, like freaking like everybody's doing like a different dance and shit. And even the monsters would do dances. It was really cool. But I love A Pup Named Scooby Doo. It was on ABC Saturday mornings. Used to watch it all the time, man. Great cartoon, especially for the younger kids who want to be introduced to Scooby-Doo. You don't want them to watch the scariest stuff. So just let them watch a pup named Scooby-Doo. It's a great introductory cartoon.
Well, and look, it was a great, solid, about 3 years, if I remember right. It was 88 to 91.
Yeah.
And one of the most notable things that occurred with this, because we always talk about the different things we geek on about, but I've read a couple of different books about some animators, early animation, history of animation, things like that. One of the crazy things that happened from this was a good chunk of the Hanna-Barbera team defected with Tom Ruegger after the 91 ended and went to Warner Bros.
Yes.
Where they ended up coming up with our favorites like Tiny Toons
and Animaniacs,
Pinky and the Brain, Freakazoid, and had a great run of their own.
Yes, sir.
Because that's the thing, like with animation specifically, like people probably don't catch it as much because it's not feature film, unless it's the Walt Disney Company or Hanna-Barbera where you're putting somebody's stamp on it for a style or a name. They kind of lose the fact that, okay, that person might have been the originator, but there's a whole team they bring on, and most of those guys will hang out for a minute, but the really talented and the really driven ones, they'll make a decision at some point to go out and strike out on their own, and then that's where we get that growth in the medium.
That's right. Now, after the 91 thing, Scooby-Doo went through sort of a hiatus in terms of television. Like, there would be no...
Well, I mean... Hiatus might be rough, because during this time, shit ton of reruns. They've never been off the air.
That plus they started going into the whole straight to DVD market, which we're going to get into a little bit later. But in terms of television, the next Scooby-Doo show will not be until 2002 on Kids WB. What's New Scooby-Doo? Now, the same thing about this actually goes back to the original format of Scooby-Doo. Adds a little more comedy, and also because of the fact it's 2002, they started adding more technology that is more prevalent than what was on the original show. This is actually the last version of Scooby-Doo to have Shaggy voiced by Casey Kasem.
Yep.
Last version of that. And also, this is This is also the first interpretation where Frank Welker took over the voice of Scooby. Frank Welker is now the voice of Scooby, and he's the voice of Fred, and now he's the voice of Scooby. And this was the first one, and it's so great. But I love the theme song of the show by Simple Plan.
Oh yeah.
What's the Scooby-Doo? They're coming after you. We're gonna solve that mystery. Very, very Blink-182 sounding song. It was really good too. So I was a big fan of this one, man. They had another show after that, Scooby-Doo, Shaggy and Scooby-Doo Get a Clue. This one is the most different of all the shows, and this is actually the first one. This is actually the last one that was actually produced by Joseph Barbera before his death. Yeah, and this actually, like I said, this did not have Casey Kasem and Shaggy. They actually had Scott Menville,
but he did make an appearance.
Yeah, he did make an appearance, but he wasn't Shaggy though. No. The thing about it is, Scott Menville, since we mentioned about it, Scott Menville is another one of those young, prolific voice actors now. If you hear his voice, it's like, oh my god, I've heard a million things. I think the more prevalent thing that he's done in the last few years is Teen Titans. He's the voice of Robin. So, and then think about it, he's one of those people where his voice sounds exactly the same since you first heard it, in the early 2000s, late 90s. And the thing about it is, he's 50 years old. He sounds like he's 17. Great voice. A talent. Great voice, man. Great voice. But this one is different because of the fact that, Fred, Daphne, and Velma are kind of downgraded. They do a cameo and do guest appearances and shit, but
they're not featured players.
Yeah, the main people in this one is basically just Scooby and Shaggy, and apparently Shaggy's uncle is this rich guy who leaves Shaggy this inheritance. The thing about it is, Shaggy's uncle had a bunch of enemies, including one called Dr. Phineas Phoebes, who's supposed to be this technology pirate and shit. And so the whole thing about it is Scooby and Shaggy are on this worldwide mission to stop this guy from taking over the world. That's basically the whole premise of that show.
Now, since you're talking about his Uncle Albert, that's Shaggy's Uncle Albert, that's actually where Casey Kasem made his cameo. He came in his Uncle Albert's voice.
Yeah, so that's the last thing of Casey Kasem on Scooby-Doo. Now, this next show on Cartoon Network, this is actually a favorite of mine because I thought it was really, really good. Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated from 2010 to 2013. Now, this one, again, goes back to the original format of Scooby-Doo. Fred, Daphne, and Velma, everybody is part of the gang. And they also have a new hometown, Crystal Cove, the most hauntedest place on Earth. And
As you'd like to make your hometown.
Yeah. But the thing about it is, I like this show a lot because of the fact that they have adults on the show that don't like Scooby and the gang interfering with police business. It's like more realistic. Like, why y'all keep coming? Why you keep doing this? And actually, one of them, one of them is like the mayor is actually Fred's dad, and then there's like a sheriff or whatever. I think Fred's dad is voiced by Frank Welker, and Fred is also the voice of Fred on this show too. But the thing about this show is different because it had different references to the previous interpretations of the franchise. Like I said, they mentioned they brought back Flim Flam and Vincent Van Gogh.
Yeah.
And also they had like freaking references to like real life horror movies, like freaking like Nightmare on Elm Street. They had Saw references. They actually had a Twin Peaks episode.
You know what? I was just noticing because I was double checking my notes here.
Yeah.
Casey Kasem actually made an appearance in this as well.
Did he?
Yeah, he was in as Shaggy's dad. It was literally his last appearance before he passed, as far as Shaggy and Scooby and everything goes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was one of the weird ones I found when I was double checking everything, doing my research, make sure I was up on it.
Also, two things that they added to this show that they didn't have in the show before: an ongoing story arc. They had an overall story arc of the show, like about the dark elements of it, and also relationships. Because they actually put Fred and Daphne in a relationship. They put Shaggy and Velma in a relationship, and Scooby just being Scooby. But they actually had relationship issues, which is like different from the different shows.
Yeah, I mean, it was always surface prior to this. You never had any real depth or character arcs.
And this, just like the 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo, the monsters and ghosts on this show were real. And they also brought back different elements of the Scooby-Doo shit. They brought back different Hanna-Barbera characters. They brought back Captain Caveman, Jabberjaw, the Funky Phantom, Blue Falcon, and Dynamite. I remember they had one show. Stop laughing whenever I say Blue Falcon.
Sorry.
Yeah, but I remember they had.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. But they had one episode where it was like a mystery catchers club, and all those guys came back to solve one mystery together. And they also brought back this group called the Hex Girls, which is actually in the Scooby-Doo directed DVD stuff.
Yeah.
And Vincent Van Gogh. The difference in Vincent Van Gogh on this show is they made him like kind of like Peter Vincent in Fright Night.
Oh, right, yeah.
He's basically like a film star that dabbled in that kind of stuff. That's basically what he was in this show. Another show after this, Be Cool Scooby-Doo, is not really much. It's like a series of shorts, and it's basically just the gang living it up.
Also on Boomerang.
They basically the gang living it up in the summer right after they graduate high school, and they run into monsters, etc. There's really not that much to it. And the last and most current interpretation of Scooby-Doo, one that's actually airing now.
Yep.
Scooby-Doo and Guess Who. Now this is actually on Boomerang. Primarily on Boomerang.
I mean, it's supposed to be Cartoon Network, but Cartoon Network doesn't really show this kind of stuff anymore.
But this actually harkens back to the new Scooby-Doo movies where they would have like a celebrity guest star. But the celebrities are people we know now.
Yeah.
Like singers like Housley and Sia. They had Bill Nye the Science Guy, Mark Hamill, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Tyson makes more sense to me than Bill Nye.
Ricky Gervais.
I actually kind of like that.
Jim Gaffigan. Keenan Thompson from SNL, and then they have NBA star Chris Paul does an episode, and they also have fictional characters. They actually, my favorite one that actually is on here, Steve Urkel.
Yeah,
they brought back Jaleel White as Steve Urkel for an episode of Scooby Doo.
Yeah,
he actually decided to do it again.
They got Kevin Conroy as Batman.
Yeah, Wonder Woman, The Flash, and Sherlock Holmes.
Yep.
Now, in terms of the movies and stuff, since we're getting into the movies now, the first kind of movie that they had was a special they did in 1979 called Scooby-Doo Goes Hollywood. Now, the premise of this was Scooby, more accurately, Shaggy, was tired of how they were treated. It was basically breaking the fourth wall.
Right.
Shaggy was tired of how they were being treated on the show. He thought they should be bigger stars than they were. Scooby was happy as is, but that.
Well, he's a dog. He's always happy.
But because he's a dog and Shaggy's his master, he kind of goes along.
Yeah,
with
he follows him anyway.
Yeah, so like he's kind of like pitching like to the network, hey. Got Scooby-Doo here. Scooby-Doo can do more than this. He can be on prime time. He's ready for prime time. He's not a Saturday morning cartoon. He's ready for prime time. So they actually do different parodies.
Who's Lassie? I've never heard of Lassie.
They do different parodies of different movies of the time with Scooby-Doo in it. Like they deal with how the West was won, how Scooby won the West. Happy Days, Scooby Days, and he was the Scoob. Laverne and Shirley, they had Levon and Scooby. Superman, Super Scooby. The Sound of Music, The Sound of Scooby. Sonny and Cher, Scooby and Sherry, The Love Boat, The Love Ship, and Charlie's Angels, Scooby's Angels. But eventually, as the special goes along, it's actually a musical special too. Eventually, Fred, Daphne, and Velma convince Scooby, along with all of the Scooby fans, please come back, Scooby-Doo. We love you as is. And he's like, you know what? I'm coming back. And then he goes back, and then Shaggy keeps still trying to pitch himself, but everyone's like, fuck that. No.
Yeah, nobody wants Shaggy without Scooby.
Exactly. Now, since I said, between the time frame between A Pup Named Scooby-Doo and all this other thing, they did a bunch of direct-to-TV, either direct-to-TV or direct-to-DVD movies for Scooby-Doo.
Well, I mean, time-wise, some of it was actually direct to VHS, but I get your point.
Yeah. So in 87 and 88, they actually did a bunch of TV movies for Hanna-Barbera called the Hanna-Barbera Superstars 10 series. They had a bunch of
Actually, Laserdisc. They did have some Laserdisc.
Gotcha. They actually had a bunch of different movies for Scooby-Doo. 3 of them that were actually produced were Scooby-Doo and the Blue Brothers. The Blue Brothers are basically those brother ghosts and Casper.
Yeah.
Imagine that group, but they were
Basically.
they were inept ghost catchers.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then the next one was Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School, which had Shaggy become the gym teacher for this school of monster girls. So basically, imagine the Universal monsters. But
it got weird for a minute.
Yeah, they had a bunch of teenage girls who were basically teenage versions of the Universal monsters. There was a vampire girl, there was a werewolf girl, there was a Frankenstein girl, a mummy girl, that kind of thing. But excuse me. My favorite of the group, and the last one they produced of that series, Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf. I really like
you're just all about werewolves.
I love werewolves, so yeah, I'm all about werewolves. But yeah, this one actually had Shaggy as a werewolf.
From now on, if I pitch you something you don't like it, I'm going to say, but so-and-so is a werewolf. I think that can get you on anything.
The sad part about it is you're right. So, as long as it's a werewolf, I'm good. But this one actually has Scooby. They changed up the format a little bit.
They had English patient, but he's a werewolf.
God damn it. It's actually not a bad idea.
I know, right?
But okay, so let me finish this shit. So they had Shaggy as a race car driver, and Scooby and Scrappy were his mechanics. This is still when they had Scrappy, and he actually had a girlfriend they only used for this one thing, and they never used again.
I actually liked this one.
Yeah, with Googie. Yeah. There's a girlfriend, Googie. She loves Shaggy, but Shaggy didn't give a fuck about her. And
it was sort of a taming of the shrew, but the shrew never gets tamed.
Exactly. So the whole get down is Count Dracula in Transylvania does this annual race with the monsters to crown Monster of the Year, and it's a drag race. And their werewolf that they usually have decided to retire, so they needed a new werewolf. They hear about Shaggy as being this great race car driver. It's like, you know what? He's going to be our new werewolf. So they make Shaggy into a werewolf. And that's pretty much the whole premise of that movie. But I love the music in it because it's so 80s synthesizer. I really love it.
It's ridiculous, but fantastic at the same time.
Okay. Now, since we talked about the reruns earlier, since you said during the time frame between A Pup Named Scooby-Doo and What's New Scooby-Doo, the popularity of Scooby-Doo was huge because of Cartoon Network. That's how I kind of got onto Scooby-Doo.
Well, yeah, I mean, as far as the original goes, for sure.
Yeah. So they brought back the original cartoons on Cartoon Network.
That was kind of the best thing about the cable explosion in the 90s was that you had a lot of shows that had since the conventional wisdom would have said that they'd outlived their usefulness or outlived their relevance, but you had tons of people who had airtime now with these new cable providers, and they're going, well, shit, I got 24 hours a day I need to fill, and so they were just optioning it. It's not that dissimilar to what you got going on right now in the streaming wars with Netflix and Disney Plus and everybody else. If you've got a library, that's what your strength is, and so being able to put that out there, because then you get everybody. Yeah. Now,
Hanna-Barbera at this time was actually initially a subsidiary of Turner Entertainment, but Turner became a subsidiary of Warner Brothers during the whole Time Warner merger. Look that shit up. That's a disaster.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it got more disastrous once AOL came into the mix.
Actually, funny enough, the Time Warner AOL thing is actually why WCW is no longer in business, but that'll be another episode. Well,
and just as a brief little business interlude, the crazy thing is follow Ted Turner and his rise through the 80s into the 90s, because holy shit, with Turner Classic Movies, his owning and getting rid of MGM and basically stripping out the library and all that stuff. Yeah. I mean, And again, you can get into you get the milk in. There's so much on the business side that if you want to geek out on, you can spend literally weeks just going, "Holy, this happened!
Yeah,
this happened!"
Yes.
It's insane.
Now, at the beginning of that, in around '98, they decided, basically in Warner Brothers and other shit, to start producing some new Scooby-Doo direct-to-video movies, and they basically would do one or two a year, starting from 1998 to now.
Yep.
Now, the first 4 they were released within a year or two of each other. Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost, Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders, and Scooby-Doo and Cyber Chase. Now, these first ones were different because of the fact they actually had a darker tone than the original cartoon, and they actually had actual supernatural forces. They also, like I said, since we mentioned it earlier, the Witch's Ghost movie actually introduced a group called the Hex Girls, and they kind of became new recurring characters in the Scooby-Doo franchise. Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase is actually the last one made by Hanna-Barbera before it got absorbed into Warner Brothers. And actually it followed William Hanna's death in 2001. And like I said, they still make one Scooby-Doo movie a year even now. You know what I'm saying? Animated, yes.
We'll get into live action here in a second.
Actually, literally a second. Now this one, actually what I'm about to go into now. Scooby-Doo, the movie in 2002. So it's actually supposed to be the first installment of a live-action Scooby-Doo series. It was directed by Rajay Gosnell. And actually, funny enough, it was written by James Gunn. Guardians of the Galaxy, James Gunn. Yeah, I know.
I love James Gunn, too.
I know. And the cast for the movie, the cast for the movie, Freddie Prinze Jr. as Fred, Sarah Michelle Gellar as Daphne.
We can't lose!
I know. Sarah Michelle Gellar as Daphne, Matthew Lillard as Shaggy, who was actually the best one of the bunch.
And actually, I think I hate him the most.
But he's the best one of the bunch.
And I still hate him the most.
I know. And Linda Cardinale as Velma. And they also had...
what was it? There was another... Because basically what they did was they just ripped off every teen movie from the late 90s into early 2000s. And I'm trying to remember, was he in Dude, Where's My Car?
No, that's not him.
There was another movie like that where he played...
He was in Scream.
No, but it wasn't Scream. There's another movie that he was in that he drove me nuts in. And from that point on, I always had a hard time watching him. But he played basically like a stoner kind of a character.
I'll
have to look it up, and I'll bring it up one of these times when it makes sense. But God,
yeah. So to get down to the actual movie itself, was actually filming took place in Queensland, Australia, at a budget of $84 million. I didn't know it was that much.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was actually released on June 14, 2002, and grossed $275 million worldwide. So it was successful. And then the thing about it was they had Shaggy, the reggae guy. Shaggy and different groups do different versions of the Scooby-Doo thing.
Yeah, but the problem is even at 260, right? It says it's 84 million. The math that you got to use when you figure it out. So if they spent 84 million to make it, they spent another 84 million to market it, which means they spent 168 on this movie. Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong, anybody would be happy to show any kind of a profit on something like that. But especially at this point in time, I mean, we're right around, I think we're, a year, 2 years past, and I have to double check the numbers on it. Titanic, right? The first $1 billion blockbuster. Right. It's kind of an also-ran.
True. I can see that.
You know what I mean?
Now, the premise
it was good enough to get a sequel, but that ain't saying much.
The premise of the movie had the guys, the Mystery Incorporated, basically they were solving one case, the case of the Luna Ghost. However, long-time friction between the members started to basically collide at this one case. Fred was basically a glory hog. Daphne was just tired of being kidnapped and shit all the time. She started taking on martial arts. Velma was tired of never being credited for her ideas because of the fact she is the genius of the group.
Yeah, she's the one who actually really knew what was up.
And the thing about it is Shaggy and Scooby were cool with the group as is.
Yeah, they were basically constantly looking for snacks because they've been in the back of the Mystery Machine. Yeah. Hotboxing.
Yeah, so basically what happens is the band breaks up. Scooby and Shaggy have the van, so they're pretty much just theirs now. Now, after a 2-year disbandment, the group reunites to solve a mystery at this resort called Spooky Island, owned by Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean. Yeah. But now originally the movie was supposed to have a darker tone, and actually was supposed to be very similar to the Brady Bunch movie, which is a really good movie. Yeah, I love the Brady Bunch movie.
They did a good job.
And it's supposed to have a PG-13 rating. Now, Shaggy was supposed to be a stoner, and there was supposed to be a lot of marijuana references. But apparently, according to Sarah Michelle Gellar, right after this cast signed on, they did a lot of changes and it became more family friendly. A few of the adult,
it's got it.
Yeah, a few of the adult jokes stayed in, but at the same time, it's like, they what they were going for was a lot better than what they got.
Now, you know what? To be fair, because I do actually like his calling card for Matthew Lillard, SLC Punk.
Yeah,
great film. I have to be fair. That was a killer film for indie.
Oh, yeah.
If you're an indie movie buff, if you like independent film, he actually did a solid job in that. And as somebody who's lived in Salt Lake City for a good chunk of time, some stuff got a little bit out there. Some of it was pretty legit as far as what that's like. It was, he's got some stuff. I don't know what it was. Like I said, I'll remember what the movie was that drove me nuts with him. There was a movie that he did sometime in the 90s that, for me, I just went, oh, God.
Good. Now, right after this, they did another movie 2 years later because of the fact, like I said, it was a financial success. So they made Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed in 2004. Basically had the same director, same writer, same cast, but they added some new guest stars. So they had Seth Green, Tim Blake Nelson, Peter Boyle, and Alicia Silverstone. Now, like I said, this movie got mainly negative reviews and did not meet the studio's projections in terms of box office. So after the poor reception of this movie, there was plans for a third movie, but that got canceled.
Thank God.
Yeah. But now, in the 2020, there's a new movie coming in, and it's going to be computer animated. Scoob.
It might be all right.
Actually, I've seen the trailer for it. It looks pretty good.
See, you're going to be the only one who does because I made a decision a long time ago. I don't watch trailers. I usually, if I'm on the fence about seeing a film, I'll wait and get reviews from someone like you, someone that I trust. I know their taste, I know their style. If they actually have an acumen towards it.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say this, too. I actually saw Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey, and Son the Hedgehog. They're both trash.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured.
Yeah. So.
And I'm bummed about it, too, because I would love for either one of those or both of them to have been fantastic. I mean, Harley Quinn's kind of a weird one for me because like we've had this conversation 100 times before. I'm a huge Batman fan because of Joker.
All right.
And I love especially the Dark Knight envisionment of those characters. I do remember Harley Quinn in a positive light from all of the cartoons, the cartoon version where she was created. Yeah. But man, I just
it was a bad movie.
From everything I was seeing from it, I didn't think they were going to get there.
It was a bad movie, and the best part of the Sonic movie was Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Because that was best.
What I figured was probably happening with Birds of Prey, and let's all just be honest for a second, it's the sexualization of Harley Quinn and Margot Robbie being a really great facsimile of how that character was drawn and originally imagined. People would just say, oh, okay, we're going to go see that, but you forgot the story. Because if you don't have a story, like if you've got a story, you're going to end up with something people will watch over and over again. I mean, that's what you and I talk about 100 times.
There's a lot of great references in it, but it's kind of piecemeal together. It doesn't really. It's
just too bad.
It doesn't really come across well. Unfortunately.
I mean, that was as much as I hated the Jared Leto version of Joker. Yeah, that was what really kills Suicide Squad. Yeah, the story's trash.
Yeah. Now, after the Scooby-Doo 2 fiasco, Cartoon Network actually released a couple of Scooby-Doo live TV movies. Scooby-Doo: The Mystery Begins in 2009, the 40-year anniversary of the show's debut. And it basically had the kids. It basically had them as kids when they first meet in high school before this modern generation. They had another movie, Scooby-Doo: Curse of the Lake Monster, with the same cast, and then they actually did a direct-to-DVD spinoff, Daphne and Velma, which did not have Scooby-Doo or Fred or any of them at all, which I don't know why they did that one.
Yeah,
I don't know why they. Now the whole premise of these movies, they're supposed to be prequels to these movies, like in 2002. So yeah, it's weird. Yeah. Now since we talk about Scoob, the computer animated movie that's going to be coming up, produced by Warner Animation Group, the cast of it looks pretty good. Now Frank Welker is back as Scooby. So I'm happy about that. But in terms of like Fred, Daphne, Automa, Zac Efron is the voice of Fred. Let's see. Amanda Seyfried, I believe his name is. She's Daphne. Will Forte is Shaggy.
Yeah.
Gina Gina Rodriguez from Jane the Virgin. She's Velma. And actually, they're bringing back a lot of the Hanna-Barbera characters with voiced by stars. First one I see here is Blue Falcon and Dog Wonder. Blue Falcon's going to be voiced by Mark Wahlberg, and Dog Wonder's going to be voiced by Ken Jeong.
Actually, I like that.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. I love Ken Jeong. Have you seen his stand-up?
Yes, I have.
Oh man, that
And,
guy.
then, and the two of the favorites that I'm seeing here, Tracy Morgan's going to be the voice of Captain Caveman.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Dude, okay.
And Jason Isaacs is going to be the movie's villain, Dick Dastardly.
Okay.
They're bringing back Dick Dastardly.
Okay.
I'm happy about that because
Yeah.
I love Dick Dastardly. Like, drat. Double drat. Because it's foiled again. Now, in terms of like its legacy, over its 5-decade broadcast history, Scooby-Doo was only nominated for the Emmy twice. And mainly one of them was for a pup named Scooby-Doo, and another one was for Mindy Kahn. Apparently, she took over as Velma for one point for What's New Scooby-Doo.
But see, this right here goes back to what we talk about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get an award, if you can get a statue, that's nice. But what it's really about, those eyeballs. If you
Yes.
can get the viewership, you get to keep going and keep going and keep going. And whether they ever get another statue or not, who cares?
Now, like I said,
That's the win.
Yeah, like I said, Scooby-Doo has maintained a very significant fan base since the 90s.
50 years.
Yeah, mainly because of the fact the show is popular with young kids and nostalgic adults who grew up on the original series.
Which is the best thing they've got going for them, right? Because they have this thing going for so long. Everybody, everything runs in cycles, right?
Yes.
So the fact that they were able to make that first transition, because I remember when I was a kid, like I talked about before, kind of joking around about some of the cartoons I wasn't allowed to watch.
Yeah.
Even with some of the new iterations, my folks were always kind of cool to hang out and watch a little Scooby-Doo with me because even though both of my parents didn't watch a ton of cartoons growing up and everything, the handful that they had seen, they've seen Scooby-Doo. Everybody's seen Scooby-Doo, and there's nothing about it that, I mean, aside from the jokes about them constantly having the munchies because they're smoking weed or whatever.
Yeah.
Aside from that little bit, there's nothing controversial.
I'm actually about to go into that. Now, older adults and teenagers admit they enjoy Scooby-Doo because of the fact that perceived theories about the gang, like mainly Shaggy being a pothead, Velma possibly being a lesbian, and then the whole thing about Fred and Daphne going off, what are they doing, that kind of shit.
They're looking for a spot to make out.
Basically, yeah. And also in the 2000s, Scooby-Doo started gaining a lot of recognition on polls. In 2002, in a 2002 issue of TV Guide, on the list of the 50 greatest cartoon characters of all time, Scooby came in 22nd. He was ranked 13th.
Seems kind of low to me.
Me too. He was ranked 13th on Animal Planet's list of the 50 greatest TV animals.
Still seems low.
Yeah. For 1 year, from 2004 to 2005, Scooby-Doo held the Guinness Book World Record for most episodes of any animated television show ever produced. The record was previously held and taken back by The Simpsons.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, they're in a different production matrix.
And also in 2009, IGN named Scooby-Doo 24 on its top 100 best animated TV shows. Again, TV Guide redid the list of the 50 greatest characters of all time, and Scooby-Doo came in 5th.
Okay, that sounds accurate to me.
Now, in terms of how Scooby-Doo has permeated pop culture, God knows how many movies and TV shows have done some sort of parody of Scooby-Doo.
They all do it.
Yes, right.
I mean, if you're around for more than a couple of seasons, you have to, because it's almost like a rite of passage.
Yeah.
I mean, we've even joked when we were talking right before we started about Family Guy. This is a Swamp Thing.
Yeah. I like when they did it was like it was Scooby-Doo, but they did like CSI.
Yeah.
I remember that. You remember that? And it actually was Fred Welker as the voice of Fred too.
Yeah.
Like, hey guys, we found his body. Like, then they look at the body and Scooby's all scared. Like, that's right, Scoob. We're dealing with 1/6 son of a bitch. That shit was funny.
Yeah, but then they need to crash into it with the Who.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that shit. Yeah. Now, since we talked about Sarah Michelle Gellar, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV show.
Yep.
The group of hunters on that show refer to themselves as the Scooby Gang.
Yep.
And they always, because of the fact they always dealing with mysteries and always fighting supernatural monsters and shit. And like I said, Sarah was Daphne in the ill-fated movies. Now, the Scooby Gang itself actually appeared on Batman the Brave and the Bold cartoon, which is a really good cartoon if you ever get a chance to check it out. They had an episode called Batman's Strangest Cases, and they basically did a whole get down of the Scooby-Doo movies episode where, like, you know, he meets Scooby and the gang, and then they actually rescuing Weird Al Yankovic from the Joker and the Penguin.
Yeah, that's right.
That was really cool. Wayne's World, the movie, like at one point they do the alternate ending things or whatever at the beginning. And they decided to do the Scooby-Doo ending.
Yeah.
Where they're in their basement and then Rob Lowe is unmasked like, let's see who you really are. Why, it's Old Man Witherspoon, the owner of the old music park. And the same thing. And I would have got away with it too if it weren't for you snooping kids. And then actually Garth does a Scooby-Doo impression. Right. Good Wayne. Like he does that shit. The Scooby-Doo ending. And Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. This is a good one. They have a scene where Jay and Silent Bob are actually picked up by a gang in a van that closely resembles Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
And then at one point they're all smoking pot, and then they see the girls are in their bras, and the dog starts talking. And then like at one point they get passed out, and then Jay has a dream that the Shaggy character is like, let's harvest the organs. And they say, you know, Jay wakes up in a bathtub full of ice with his liver missing. Oh yeah, I love this one. In '99, Cartoon Network did a bunch of like different like vignettes for like the commercials. But it was basically a spoof of the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah,
they call it the Scooby-Doo Project. It's basically it's live action plus animation. And it basically superimposed the Scooby-Doo characters. It was basically like found footage.
Yeah.
And with them in the woods and shit and doing like different parodies of like what the show is about. It's really funny stuff. Futurama, of course, did an episode called Saturday Morning Pit, where basically the Futurama characters were the Scooby Gang. They had Bender as Scooby, Hermes was Fred, Leela was Daphne, Amy was Velma, and of course Fry himself was Shaggy.
Yeah, well, that just makes too much sense.
Oh, this is a really good one too. In an episode of The Venture Brothers, which is a favorite show of mine, they did an episode called Viva Los Mortis, where basically they have the Scooby Gang coming to the Venture compound, but they're all adults now.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, they're all based off of different serial killers. So they changed the names too. Like Ted is Freddy and Ted Bundy mixed together. Patty is Daphne and Patty Hearst. Val is Velma and Valerie Solanas, who apparently tried to kill Andy Warhol in '68.
Yep.
Shaggy is basically, I love this one. Shaggy is a mix of Shaggy and the Son of Sam.
He's David Berkowitz.
Yeah, he's David Berkowitz.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and his possessed dog, the one that told him to kill his neighbor, is Scooby. It was so great. Yeah. I love this. The Shaggy character's like at one point, and this dog fucking talks, man, because nobody believed him. The South Park episode. Oh yeah, Korn's Groovy Pirate Ghost Mystery with Korn. That was a good one.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, that was a really good one. They had the South Park characters and then Korn animated like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
And they were solving this mystery in South Park or whatever where they were trying to tackle an invasion of pirate ghosts. I remember that because like Kenny kept dressing up like Kenny was dressed up like Ed 209.
Yeah.
So we did RoboCop the other time. That was great, man. And of course, Harvey Birdman had a really good episode where actually he defends Scooby and Shaggy against possession charges. And it's actually found footage of Scooby and Shaggy smoking in a van, like, hey, Scooby. You see the smoking. It was great. Oh yeah, and this is one of the more recent ones. Last year, 2 years ago, the show Supernatural on the CW. Yeah, they did a crossover with Scooby-Doo called Scooby Natural, where those characters were like they like two brothers who tackle supernatural monsters and shit like that. They end up like getting involved in like some kind of curse or some curse book, and they end up in Scooby-Doo. But the thing about it is, in Scooby-Doo, all the killings and stuff is real.
Yeah.
So it's all the Scooby people, all the Scooby gang, and then on one of the characters keeps trying to get at Daphne.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, you doing? Yeah, you can't try to get at her hard, man. It was really funny. But like I said, for those of you who are fans of old school cartoons like us, Scooby-Doo is definitely one of the best, man. It's one of the, like, I don't know.
Without a doubt.
I can't watch it without a smile on my face.
No, it's impossible.
Yeah, I know like I said, I know the formula. I know it's tired, etc., etc. But at the same time, like, I'd rather there's something like if anything else was on TV, I'd rather watch Scooby-Doo.
Well, and I mean, look, the other thing too that's kind of been great and a big part of why it's stood the test of time was they actually were great with merchandising, but without going over the top. Like, one of the things that was bothering me when they came out with Episode 7 for Star Wars, right? Like, you couldn't go anywhere without getting something that had Star Wars slapped on its head. I remember we bought, like, some of those little, like, mini oranges, the cuties.
Yeah.
The box that I got it at Stater Bros had freaking Star Wars labeling and stuff on it, so I was eating Star Wars freaking cuties for a day. But
Star Wars oranges.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it was over the top ridiculous. But like, if you look at them all the way from the beginning, you know, they actually worked with Milton Bradley, did some lunch boxes, they did some coloring books, some story books, did like underwear, little basic, you know, things like that for kids. And then eventually, working with Milton Bradley, they came up with the Scooby-Doo board game, which, I mean, it's not quite like Clue, but it's in the same vein.
Right.
And then they actually had Scooby-Doo multivitamins through Bayer in 2001, which is kind of, I mean, it makes sense because Flintstones chewables, going back forever, another Hanna-Barbera staple, right? In the 80s, let's see here, they also had, where'd it go? I want to make sure I get this. Oh, it was the 80s when they finally started doing the Scooby-Doo breakfast cereal.
Oh, yeah.
Some little plush toys. You know, I think everybody's probably at least seen them, if not had them.
Everybody had a cereal in the 80s. Gremlins had a cereal. Mr. T had a cereal.
Exactly.
Pee Wee Herman had a cereal. Everybody.
And then, do you remember Scooby Snack dog treats?
Oh, yeah.
I remember getting those for the first time. I had this little teacup Yorkie and everything.
Urkel O's.
Yeah,
Urkel O's. That was actual cereal, Urkel O's. Yeah, man.
Well, I mean, it's kind of crazy. Anybody in this business finds something, and then everybody tries to duplicate it.
Okay.
And always with mixed results. Yeah, I mean, they've been doing mostly the children's book thing, and then actually, I mean, you probably know more about this than I would, but the comic books.
Yeah.
So they did comics pretty much starting 69, like right when they came out.
Yeah, but like I said, the most recent one was actually with DC Comics. They had one called Scooby Apocalypse, where it's basically like kind of real world-ish with Scooby and the gang. But it was really good. It was like, I think it's like Scooby and the gang during the zombie apocalypse or something along those lines. It was really good. So like you get a chance to check that out. But Hanna-Barbera did a great collection with DC. The best one of those to me is Future Quest, where it had all the different superhero characters. So it's Johnny Quest, Space Ghost, Birdman, Herculoids, Mitor, all those characters in this great story arc. So I'll definitely check those out.
I was just double checking my notes. So they actually did do a Scooby-Doo version of Clue in 2007.
Nice.
So I mean, it makes sense. It's a solid, time-tested, killer formula. That, I mean, 50 years, man. There's very few shows, properties, if anything, that have been this steady for 50 years.
I can't. So we basically gone through this episode, and I really cannot think of a better way to end it than this. Scooby-Doo!
What the fuck? This has been Dropping That Culture
with JD and AJ. I'm JD.
And I'm AJ.
We'll catch you next time.
Dropping that culture. 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 Dropping that culture.